Hey guys, tonight we descend into a world where the job title alone makes your nose wrinkle before you even hear the details. Imagine the medieval city at night, quiet except for a few dogs barking and a bell tolling from some faraway church tower. The air is heavy, a mixture of smoke from peat fires and something else you can't quite place until you remember. Beneath the cobblestone streets, in the hidden depths of cesspits and latrines, waits your workplace. You are the gong farmer, a person who spends long nights in complete darkness scooping out the raw waste of an entire town. You probably won't survive this one, but it's a living. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in right now, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where this sleepy caravan travels every night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle through a back alley with your spade, a wooden bucket and a lantern sputtering weakly in the damp air. It's the middle of the night because the job can't be done in daylight. The stench is unbearable, but it's worse for your neighbours than for you. After a while, your nose almost gives up. The cesspit lies behind a tavern, dug deep into the ground, a stone-lined hole where waste from privies and chamber pots has been dumped for months. The tavern keeper doesn't dare let customers see what's lurking under their ale-soaked benches, so you arrive like a ghost to take it away. Lowering yourself into the pit is both a physical and mental battle. The muck clings to your boots, and the fumes rise up like invisible claws, stinging your eyes. You know the danger is not just disgust. Many gong farmers fainted or died from the poisonous gases, methane and hydrogen sulfide, that built up in confined pits. Historians still argue whether workers use simple candles to test the air, letting flames warn of suffocation, or whether they simply prayed and hoped for the best. Either way, you feel the heat of your lantern and try not to breathe too deeply. You stab your spade into the sludge, lifting out a heavy glob that slaps into your bucket. Each load is hauled up by rope and emptied into a cart outside. It will later be dumped in fields beyond the city walls, where, ironically, it becomes fertilizer for crops. Yes, the bread on your table tomorrow might grow from tonight's unspeakable harvest. And that's the strange, practical cycle of medieval life. Waste recycled into survival. A quirky detail. Payment for your work comes in surprising forms. Gong farmers were well compensated compared to many labourers, sometimes earning sixpence a day, more than a skilled craftsman. Still, nobody wanted to share a table with you afterward. Some city ordinances even forbade gong farmers from appearing in public at certain hours, as though the smell itself carried crime. You carry not just filth, but social exile on your shoulders. As you scoop, you notice odd treasures hidden in the muck. Lost coins, jewellery, even tools sometimes turn up in cesspits. Archaeologists today have found astonishing artefacts preserved in waste. Medieval shoes with intact stitching, seeds of exotic fruits showing what people ate, and even letters tossed away like forgotten secrets. In a strange way, you're both garbage man and curator of history. The lantern flickers. Your muscles ache. The pit feels endless. You try to distract yourself by imagining this as just another form of mining, only instead of gold, you're striking brown. Your hands blister, your back bends, and the cart outside fills with steaming evidence of human life. By dawn, you'll stagger out into the grey light, reeking so badly that dogs bark and children point. And yet, consider this. Without gong farmers, medieval cities would have drowned in their own refuse. Sanitation wasn't glamorous, but it was essential. London, for example, had entire regulations about when cesspits must be emptied, and fines were given if neighbours let waste overflow into streets. The Black Death reminded everyone just how deadly filth could be. So even though people avoided you, they relied on you silently. Here's where a joke slips in. If anyone ever asked what you did for a living, you'd probably say, "I move mountains," and technically you do, just not the kind that inspire poetry. A more disturbing fact is that sometimes cesspits collapsed, swallowing unlucky gong farmers whole. Chronicles describe pits breaking underfoot, burying workers alive. It's a chilling reminder that every bucket you haul is a gamble. Historians still debate whether guilds or organised companies offered any protection for gong farmers, or whether they worked as isolated labourers, taking jobs where they could. Records are patchy, but what is certain is that people like you rarely grew old. Still, imagine the quiet moment when you climb out, leaning on your spade, sweat mixing with stench, and the church bells begin to ring for morning prayers. Everyone else wakes to a cleaner street, oblivious to the invisible battle you fought while they slept. The world above keeps its dignity only because you surrendered yours below. You load the last cart, wipe your hands on straw, and glance back at the dark hole. There will be another pit tomorrow, another tavern or manor or monastery that needs cleansing. You're the unseen guardian of the city's health, even if no one will thank you. A neighbour crosses the street rather than greet you, but you shrug. It's hard to hear insults when you're too tired to care, and with that the night's work ends, but the story doesn't. You walk away, bucket empty, head full of fumes, wondering if perhaps tomorrow's cesspit will be a little less deep. Spoiler, it won't. You think last night was bad, trudging through a cesspit, but tonight your work takes you far from the city walls, out into the marshes. The moon hangs low, half hidden behind a veil of clouds, and mist drifts across stagnant pools like ghostly blankets. Every step you take pulls at your boots, a slurp of mud that threatens to steal them if you aren't careful. This is the life of a leech collector, a person who feeds their own blood to harvest a medical miracle, or at least what medieval doctors believed was a miracle. The swamp is eerily alive. Frogs croak in uneven chorus, insects hum in maddening clouds, and reeds whisper secrets as the night breeze brushes them together. Somewhere in the distance an owl hoots, its voice a reminder that while you search for bloodsuckers, other hunters search for you. Still, you press forward, your lantern swinging in your hand, light reflecting off black pools. The water looks shallow at first glance, but you know it hides pits deep enough to swallow a careless worker whole. You roll up your trousers because bearskin is the bait. The leeches don't come for your bucket or your stick. They come for flesh, for warmth, for blood. You step into the icy water, legs instantly numbed, and wait. Within moments, you feel them. Slick, wriggling ribbons brushing against your shins, finding purchase and latching on. The sensation is strange. First a pinch, then a steady pull. It's as though someone is sipping at you through tiny straws. Your instinct is to shake them off, but you stand still. The longer they feed, the fatter they get, and the more valuable they become. Doctors can't get enough of these creatures. In the medieval world view, the body was ruled by the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of one, and sickness followed. And wouldn't you know it, blood was always the easiest culprit to blame. Headache? Too much blood. Fever? Too much blood. Feeling melancholic? Probably too much blood. The solution was simple: drain it out. And so leeches became one of the most prized tools in a physician's kit. The squirming cure-all of the Middle Ages. You pluck the engorged leeches from your legs one by one and drop them into clay jars filled with damp moss to keep them alive. Their bodies writhe against each other, slimy and restless, as if eager for more. A single jar might fetch enough to buy bread and ale for a week, though never enough to escape the marsh. Collectors like you live hand to mouth, trading blood for coins that vanish almost as quickly. Still, there are quirks to the job. Folklore paints leeches as temperamental creatures, with lazy ones refusing to stick and greedy ones draining too much. Superstitions spread that if you cursed at them, they'd drop off in protest, or that humming softly kept them calm. You don't know whether to believe the tales, but when 3 attach behind your knee at once, you mutter a few choice words anyway. Maybe the old wives were onto something. The danger, though, is real. Every bite leaves a wound that keeps bleeding, thanks to the anticoagulant in their saliva. Some collectors grow faint after a long night, especially if dozens feed at once. Moss or rags help slow the flow, but infection lurks at every puncture. You've seen fellow collectors limp away with swollen legs, fevers following close behind, and the leeches themselves can be sneaky. There are stories of them slipping into noses or throats if you drink from infested water. Historians still argue whether these tales were exaggerated cautionary fables or genuine occupational hazards. Either way, you check your mouth after every gulp from your water skin, just in case. You think about the strange irony. While you risk sickness gathering these creatures, nobles in warm stone halls will pay handsomely to let them drink instead. Aristocrats sometimes scheduled regular bloodlettings, almost like a spa treatment. Imagine explaining that to someone today. I go every spring to relax. They attach leeches to my arms. Spa day, medieval edition. And here's the kicker. Unlike so many medieval remedies that faded into obscurity, leeches never truly disappeared. Modern medicine still uses them in specialized surgeries, especially to restore circulation in reattached fingers or ears. Their saliva, rich with natural anticoagulants, keeps blood flowing where it might otherwise clot. So as ridiculous as your job feels, standing waist-deep in muck while little vampires slurp at your veins, you're part of a medical tradition that stretches into hospitals even today. But right now, all you care about is surviving till dawn. Your legs ache, riddled with little circles that ooze steadily. You apply handfuls of moss, hoping it will stem the flow, and heft the jar full of wriggling prizes. Each leech is swollen, sleek and valuable. You trudge back along the muddy path, lantern swinging, the horizon lightening with the promise of morning. On the way, you imagine the conversations you'll never have. If someone asked what you did for a living, could you answer honestly? I farm vampires. Not wrong. Or perhaps, I bleed for money. Both true, neither polite. You suspect that's why leech collectors live on the edges of society, tolerated but not embraced. Everyone needs your work, yet no one truly respects it. Sound familiar? It's the eternal story of dirty jobs. At the edge of the village, you pass children on their way to fetch water. They glance at the jars on your back, wrinkle their noses, and scurry away. You smile faintly, too tired to care, but deep down you know your trade marks you as different. When you limp into the tavern for a cup of ale, people edge away. The smell of swamp clings to your clothes. The sight of leech bites covers your calves, and you sit alone. Yet ironically, if one of those villagers falls sick, who will the doctor turn to? Your jars, of course. The sun rises, mist burning off the marsh, turning the swamp water into sheets of molten gold. For one fleeting moment, it almost looks beautiful. You could trick yourself into thinking this is paradise. Then another leech wriggles between your toes, and the dream shatters. Still you gather it, because that's another coin in your pocket. You'll be back tomorrow and the day after, because as long as humans believe sickness can be drained away, leech collectors like you will never run out of work. The marsh water fades from memory, but the smell that greets you tonight makes you wish you could dive back into that swamp and stay there forever. This time you're in the heart of town, standing beside wooden vats filled to the brim with liquid that could curl your hair. Stale human urine. Welcome to the profession of the fuller, whose job is to clean and thicken wool so it can be turned into clothing. And yes, your lungs are about to burn from the stench. You tug your tunic tighter, roll your sleeves, and step up onto the rim of the vat. The wool waiting to be cleaned sits submerged, soggy and limp, fibres clinging together like drowned rats. The only way to make it usable is to stomp it, over and over, forcing the ammonia in the urine deep into the cloth. So barefoot you go into the warm, acrid soup. Your toes curl instantly. You gag. But you steady yourself, because this is the work, and without it nobody gets their fine tunics, cloaks or gowns. Your job is essential in a way most people never think about. In the medieval world, wool was king. England's economy practically revolved around it. Castles were built on the wealth of wool exports, and monarchs taxed it heavily. And yet, behind every bolt of cloth in a merchant's stall, behind every noble's cloak, stood a fuller, someone who had trampled that fabric in urine until it lost its grease and became strong enough to wear. The rhythmic stomp of your feet becomes hypnotic. The wool squishes under you, releasing waves of stinking liquid with every step. The neighbours glance in your direction and wrinkle their noses, but they tolerate you, because they know the importance of your work. Funny enough, historians still argue whether fullers were considered craftsmen with dignity or treated as untouchables, avoided because of the smell. The truth is probably both, needed desperately, but never quite invited to dinner. A quirky fact that might make you laugh between gags. The Romans did it first. Ancient Roman fullers used vats of urine collected from public latrines, so much so that Emperor Vespasian famously placed a tax on it. Imagine paying taxes on pee. Liquid gold, as officials nicknamed it. Medieval fullers simply carried on the tradition. In some cities, piss collectors went door to door, buying or gathering chamber pot contents just to supply people like you. If you've ever thought your recycling bin smelled bad, be thankful it wasn't this. As you stomp, your muscles ache. Hours pass, and still the wool needs more. The ammonia strips away lanolin, the natural grease, leaving fibres that can be spun tighter and dyed brighter. Sometimes fullers mixed clay or chalk into the process, stamping it into the cloth to make it even cleaner. Your lungs sting, your head swims, and you wonder how many years this work will shave off your life. Chronic lung damage was common, though back then nobody had a name for it. You just coughed until you couldn't anymore. And then there's the noise. Fulling wasn't always done by foot. Later, water-powered fulling mills replaced the human stomp with wooden hammers. The pounding echoed across valleys, like giants drumming in their sleep. Villagers complained about the racket, but mills sped production, and that meant more cloth, more trade, more wealth. The Industrial Revolution of fashion began, oddly enough, with people like you stomping in a barrel of pee. The funny part, people actually tried to dress this job up with some dignity. Fullers sometimes called themselves walkers or tuckers, terms that sounded less foul to polite society. If someone asked what you did, you might say, "I'm a walker of cloth." And technically, you weren't lying. But let's be honest, you knew exactly what was sloshing between your toes. You keep stamping, sweat dripping into the vat, and your mind drifts. Every so often you wonder what treasures could be hidden in the wool. Bits of straw, maybe the odd coin dropped in by accident, perhaps even a small brooch lost in the raw fleece. Archaeologists today have discovered medieval cloth fragments that still carry the traces of dyes and lanolin, proving just how central fulling was to everyday life. Without you, half the population would be walking around in greasy, itchy fleece that stank worse than your vat. And here's your reality check. You probably won't survive this job long, not just from the fumes, but from the sheer physical labour. Day after day, stomping in liquid that clings to your skin, cracking your heels, rotting your nails. Skin infections were common, and no matter how much you scrubbed afterward, the stench lingered. People knew a fuller was coming long before they saw him. Still, you take a grim pride in your work. When you see a fine cloak hanging in the marketplace dyed crimson or deep blue, you know your stomping made that possible. Historians still debate whether fullers were exploited workers or respected professionals, but in your bones you feel both truths at once. Poorly paid, mocked, yet utterly indispensable. You climb out of the vat, legs trembling, skin pruned and red. The wool must now be rinsed and dried, but your part is done for the night. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is a terrible idea because the smell will never wash out, and you shuffle home. Children whisper as you pass, calling you Stinkfoot under their breath. You chuckle wearily. Better Stinkfoot than naked, you think. As you collapse on your bed of straw, the night stomping still echoes in your muscles, a ghostly rhythm that doesn't fade. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you can almost still smell it. Congratulations, you're a fuller, part of the backbone of medieval fashion, even if no one ever puts your name on the label. Your feet still ache from stomping wool, but tonight the ache comes from something else entirely. Not your muscles, not your lungs, but from the sting of wood across skin. This isn't a job where you wade into filth or let parasites feast on your blood. This is something stranger, more humiliating, and perhaps more dangerous in its own way. Tonight, you are not in the marshes or the streets. You are standing inside a grand chamber, marble floors gleaming, tapestries heavy on the walls, and the scent of beeswax candles filling the air. You're in the presence of royalty, but you're not a prince, not a noble. You're his whipping boy. The boy beside you is perhaps 10 or 11 years old, hair neatly brushed, his velvet doublet free of stains. He holds a quill in his small hand, though his attention is nowhere near his parchment. He gazes at the sunlight streaming through stained glass, at sparrows hopping on the sill. The tutor, red-faced and severe, drones on about Latin conjugations, but the boy's mind is far from grammar. And when he dares to let the quill fall, when he smirks or yawns or whispers a joke under his breath, the tutor doesn't raise his voice at the prince. No, he turns to you. That's your function here. The rod descends, sharp, swift, cracking across your palm or your back. You flinch, your teeth grit, your vision blurs. The pain is yours, but the guilt is his. Or so the theory goes. The logic behind your existence is cruelly simple. The prince cannot be touched. His body is sacrosanct, destined for the throne. But if you suffer in his place, he will feel shame. He will reform his behaviour. That is the philosophy of the whipping boy, whether it works or not. Historians still argue. Some believe the system was more symbolic than practised widely, while others insist it was a very real solution to a very real problem. How do you discipline a child who is above punishment? You rub your sore palm and try to stand tall. The prince glances at you, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. He mouths, "Sorry." He always does. Sometimes he slips you pastries afterward, a peace offering. Sometimes he promises that when he's king, he'll reward you. Whether those promises will be kept is another matter. After all, history is filled with forgotten servants. Your bruises may fade, but the memory of them could vanish the moment he dons a crown. And yet, the relationship is complicated. You're both victim and companion, both scapegoat and confidant. You eat meals at his side, accompany him in lessons, and even play with him in the gardens. You may endure lashes, but you also share laughter, secrets, and dreams. The prince trusts you in a way he cannot trust courtiers or guards. In a strange irony, the pain you bear earns you influence. He listens to you, sometimes more than to his tutors, because he knows you've paid a price for him. Quirky details crop up in old accounts. Some say whipping boys were allowed to tease or even scold the prince in private, emboldened by the strange intimacy of their bond. Others claim whipping boys grew so close to their royal companions that they later rose with them, granted lands and titles out of gratitude. Still others whisper that whipping boys were cast aside when the prince matured, forgotten once the cane was no longer needed. Historians still debate which is truer. In the silence between each lash, you wonder which fate awaits you. Picture the spectacle when foreign ambassadors arrive. They see the prince recite Latin verses, bow with elegance and smile with charm. They do not see you sitting off to the side with bruised hands tucked under the table. They praise the boy's diligence, never guessing that discipline was beaten into you instead. The glory of royalty is polished on the backs of those like you. Here's the dark humour of it. If someone asked what your job was, you could answer, "I'm a motivational tool." Or perhaps, "I study empathy the hard way." Both answers are true, though neither would win you friends at the market. And still, there's an odd tenderness in this arrangement. When the prince sneaks you food or whispers a plan to run away from lessons, you share in his rebellion. When he dreams aloud about the future, about wearing the crown, about changing the kingdom, you are the one he tells. No tutor, no courtier, no nobleman shares his heart like you do. That intimacy might be the only reward you ever get, but danger lingers. What if the prince never learns? What if his arrogance grows, his mischief deepens, his cruelty hardens? Each lash you take now could be multiplied in years to come. The line between friendship and resentment blurs. Some whipping boys might have loved their princes, others may have hated them. Imagine watching your tormentor become king, holding power absolute, while you fade into obscurity. The thought chills you more than the sting of the cane. You stand again as the tutor snaps his book shut. The lesson ends. The prince skips away, humming a tune, his hair glinting in the sun. You follow, slower, rubbing your aching hand. In the courtyard he runs ahead, then turns back, shouting for you to join. Despite yourself, you smile. For all the pain, for all the humiliation, he is still your companion, your boyhood friend. You're bound together by circumstance, suffering, and a strange form of loyalty. As night falls, you lie awake in your straw bed, the day's pain pulsing through your skin. Tomorrow will bring another lesson, another mistake, another punishment, and you will endure it again, because that is your role. You're the whipping boy, the one who learns discipline not through books or sermons, but through the sting of the rod. And tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, you will walk into the hall and take your place at his side, bearing the weight of his privilege, praying he remembers your sacrifice when he wears the crown. The sting of the cane still lingers in your memory, but now you trade bruises for scratches, bites, and the constant rustle of something alive in the shadows. Tonight, you take on the work of a rat catcher. No perfumed chamber, no marble floors, just the stinking alleys of a medieval town where scraps rot in corners and furry shapes skitter in the dark. You shoulder your sack, grip a stick in one hand, and whistle for your ferret, your faithful partner in this war against vermin. The city sleeps, but you prowl. Your lantern throws thin circles of light across crooked beams and wet cobblestones. The smell of tallow smoke, spoiled food, and something worse rises from every corner. The sound comes next. The high, scratching squeaks of rats, multiplied 100-fold. They are everywhere, in walls, under carts, across rooftops. They breed faster than rabbits, swarming wherever there is grain, garbage, or warmth. And where there are rats, there is work for you. You slip into a baker's storeroom, the owner trailing nervously behind. He wrings his hands, muttering about ruined flour and gnawed loaves. You nod, crouch low, and release your ferret into a hole in the wall. Within moments, the silence breaks into chaos. Squeaks, thuds, the scrabble of claws, the ferret's determined chitter. Rats bolt from the shadows, and you swing your stick, catching one, then two as they dart past. The baker gasps, half in horror, half in relief. This is the job, messy, brutal, but necessary. And here's the grim backdrop. Rats weren't just nuisances. They were feared as carriers of plague. Bubonic plague, the Black Death, swept across Europe in the mid-14th century, killing millions. Though modern science reveals fleas carried the bacteria, rats were the visible enemy, the obvious villains. And evil people didn't know the exact cause, but they knew enough to blame rats for death itself. So when you hunt them, you're not just saving grain, you're protecting lives, or so people believe. Historians still argue whether rat catchers were heroes or pariahs. Some accounts suggest they were valued, hired by towns and manors, their services desperately sought. Others paint them as outcasts, accused of spreading the very vermin they controlled, or of sorcery, using charms to lure rats from one place to another for coin. The truth likely lies in between, half needed, half feared, a quirky tidbit. Some rat catchers carried little pouches of herbs, believing strong smells, mint, wormwood, or tansy, could repel vermin. Others swore by singing or whistling, claiming the sound unsettled the creatures. You, of course, know the truth. Nothing unsettles rats except teeth and claws. That's why your ferret is your best ally. Tonight he emerges from the hole, whiskers twitching, jaws bloody, dragging a limp rat twice his size. You scratch his ears and drop the catch into your sack. The baker shudders, but you smile. Job well done. Your earnings are meagre. A few coins, sometimes food, sometimes ale. Rat catchers often lived on the edge of poverty, their fortunes tied to how desperate the town was. During plagues, demand skyrocketed, but so did suspicion. People whispered that rat catchers bred or transported vermin just to keep their trade alive. Was it true? Historians still debate, but the thought lingers in every nervous glance. You walk deeper into the alleys, sack heavy with twitching bodies. The night air buzzes with danger. Rats can bite back. Some carry disease, leaving festering wounds. You bear scars on your hands and ankles as proof. Yet, strangely, you've built a tolerance. The squeak of rats doesn't frighten you anymore, it energizes you. Each catch is a victory, each kill a coin. Imagine the irony. Children cheer when you arrive at their homes because it means fewer rats stealing their food. Yet the same children laugh at you in daylight, mocking your smell, your ragged clothes, the stench of ferret musk that clings to you. You are a saviour at night, an outcast by day. It's a strange rhythm, one you've grown used to. Your work sometimes takes you beyond houses, into fields, barns, even ships. Rats loved ships, gnawing through rope, wood and cargo. Sailors despised them, but rat catchers thrived there, sometimes travelling port to port. You've heard stories of rat catchers who made fortunes following merchant fleets, though most of those stories sound more like tavern boasts than reality. And here's a joke to lighten the load. If you ever tried to impress someone by saying, "I deal in fur," you wouldn't technically be lying. It's just not the kind of fur that makes a cloak. By dawn your sack is full, heavy with the spoils of your midnight war. You tip it out by the city ditch, torch in hand, and watch flames consume the twitching pile. The smoke stings your eyes, but you know this is safer than letting carcasses rot in alleys. The baker thanks you, slipping a few coins into your palm, though he won't invite you in for breakfast. You wipe your hands on your tunic, call your ferret to your shoulder, and vanish into the waking streets. As the sun rises, townsfolk stir, unaware of the night's quiet battle. They will see fewer rats today, eat bread without gnaw marks, and sleep more soundly. They won't thank you, not openly, but their safety lies in your hands, your ferret's teeth, your endless patience. You are the rat catcher, the shadow between plague and survival, the hunter in the alleys, the one who fights enemies no one else dares to face. And tomorrow, when the squeaks return, so will you. The night squeaks of rats fade from your ears, but your stomach clenches with unease. Tonight your job isn't about hunting vermin or stomping wool or enduring blows meant for another boy. Tonight your work involves bread and ale, but not the kind enjoyed at feasts or taverns. No, this meal is laid out on a corpse. You are the sin-eater, a strange figure called when grief turns desperate, when fear of damnation outweighs fear of superstition. You arrive at a small cottage on the edge of the village. The air outside is damp, thick with the smell of wet earth and chimney smoke, but inside it is stifling, heavy with the scent of beeswax candles and something sharper, death itself. The body lies stretched on a wooden board, pale and rigid, wrapped in a rough sheet. Family members gather in silence, their eyes darting toward you, some with pleading, others with suspicion. You're both their last hope and their unspoken shame. The ritual is simple, but its weight crushes more than stone. A piece of bread has been placed carefully on the chest of the dead, sometimes with a pinch of salt scattered on top. A cup of ale rests nearby. You kneel, mutter words you've said so many times they've lost meaning, and prepare yourself. The belief is this: by eating the bread and drinking the ale, you draw into yourself the sins of the departed. Every theft, every lie, every unconfessed deed, gone from the soul, absorbed by your flesh. The family believes the dead will rise lighter, freer, ready to face heaven's gate. You break the bread. It is cold, dense, and tastes faintly of dust. You chew slowly, deliberately, the family watching each bite as though salvation itself depends on your jaws. You swallow, drink the ale, and lick the salt from your fingers. To them, it is complete. To you, it is just another weight. The irony isn't lost on you. No priest stands here. Sin-eating isn't sanctioned by the church. In fact, it's condemned. Clergymen preach that only confession, absolution, and God's mercy can wipe a soul clean. But when the priest leaves, when the family still worries, when guilt gnaws at them in the night, they turn to you. Better to risk superstition than let a loved one linger in purgatory. You are their insurance policy, even if it damns you in their eyes. Historians still argue how common this practice truly was. Some claim it existed mostly in remote border regions, Wales, the Scottish Highlands, isolated English villages. Others believe it was more widespread but rarely recorded, precisely because it embarrassed both church and community. After all, who would write proudly of a ritual the church labelled heresy? Was it fringe folklore, or an everyday reality for the poor? The truth remains hidden, debated by scholars who will never know what it feels like to chew bread laid on cold skin. Quirky tales swirl around your profession. Some villagers whisper that sin-eaters grow darker with every ritual, not just in spirit but in appearance. They say your face hollows, your eyes sink, your skin stretches thin as parchment, until you look less like a man and more like a walking corpse. Others insist you glow faintly at night, as if burdened souls shine through your body. Children run when they see you coming, clutching each other and chanting rhymes about the devil's servant. And yet, when their grandfather dies, their parents will come knocking at your door, begging you to come. The family presses a few coins into your hand, payment for your silence as much as your service. Sometimes it's food instead. A loaf, a jug of cider, maybe a bit of meat if they're generous. It's never much, but it keeps you alive, though never comfortable. Nobody becomes a sin-eater by choice. It's a role that falls on the desperate, the outcast, the one who has nothing left to lose but their reputation. You rise from the bedside, the bread gone, the ale drained. The family exhales, relief washing over them. They murmur thanks, though they will not invite you to stay, nor even meet your eyes. One woman crosses herself as you leave, as if warding off contamination. You step out into the night, the chill air hitting your face fresher than anything you've felt inside. You breathe deeply, but the weight doesn't lift. You carry it with you, always. And here's your joke for the night. If you ever opened an inn, you could call it the guilt buffet. All you can eat, no confessions required. You walk back along the muddy lane, stars faint above the clouds. A dog barks as you pass, then whimpers, retreating into the shadows. Even animals sense something clinging to you. You can't shake the feeling that every step drags more heavily, as though invisible chains rattle around your ankles. Were the dead truly lighter now? Are you truly heavier? Or is this just bread, ale, and imagination? You'll never know for certain. At home, you collapse onto your straw pallet. The few coins glint dully in your hand, enough for another day's food, another day's survival. And yet, the silence of your hut feels crowded, thick with the whispers of sins you've supposedly taken. Some nights you dream of them. A thief's guilt, a liar's shame, a drunkard's violence, all pressing against your chest, trying to crawl back out. You wake with a start, gasping, clutching your stomach. No doctor could cure such an illness. Tomorrow another family will call. They'll avoid you in daylight, spit when you pass, maybe mutter prayers under their breath. But when death visits their home, they'll send a runner to your door. You will eat again, and again, and again. Until one day, perhaps, no one bothers, because you will be gone too. Your own sins and everyone else's unanswered. Who will eat yours? No one. Perhaps that's the final irony of your profession. You cleanse others, but die unclean yourself. Still, you'll keep walking to cottages and kneeling by bodies because even if you don't believe, they do. And belief is powerful. It keeps grief at bay, if only for a little while. And so you are the sin-eater, the one who swallows sorrow, the one who becomes the village scapegoat, the one whose every meal tastes of ash and silence. Your belly is still unsettled from that last grim meal. But tonight you're not alone in a smoky cottage or kneeling at a corpse. Tonight you stand in the cold stone courtyard of a castle, the clang of metal echoing against the walls, the smell of oiled steel and horse sweat filling the air. You are a squire, apprentice to a knight, servant to chivalry, and dreamer of glory. You rise before dawn, rubbing sleep from your eyes as the first horn sounds across the keep. The knight you serve still slumbers in his chamber, but you're already awake, fetching water, laying out his clothes, and checking his armour piece by piece. Breastplate polished until it shines like a mirror. Greaves free of dents. Sword sharpened until it could split a hair. And of course, his boots cleaned of yesterday's mud. By your hands, not his. That's your lot. You polish his armour, but you also carry his chamber pot. Romance and reality walk hand in hand. The castle stirs with noise, the blacksmith's hammer ringing from the forge, the clatter of hooves in the stable, the bark of orders from guards. You dart between it all, arms full of gear, legs aching from yesterday's errands. You're young, 14, maybe 15, but you carry the weight of a man's work. The knight expects it, and so do the lords who pass by without a glance. The path to knighthood is long and brutal. You started as a page, sweeping floors, serving meals, learning to read prayers and sing songs. Now, as a squire, you're closer to glory, but still knee-deep in drudgery. You tend the horses, clean the weapons, run messages, and endure the scoldings when things aren't perfect. You train too, sparring with wooden swords, practicing horsemanship, learning the code of chivalry until it rings in your ears. Obedience, honour, loyalty. It sounds noble until you realise it also means never questioning the man who just made you clean his boots with spit and a rag. Historians still argue whether the life of a squire was more privilege or punishment. On one hand, you're close to nobility, clothed better than peasants, fed at the castle table, trained in arts reserved for the elite. On the other, you're treated like a servant, your value measured in how well you polish steel or curry a horse. Were squires proud apprentices or glorified errand boys? The truth lies somewhere in between, as your sore back and blistered hands can attest. You lead your knight's warhorse into the yard, stroking its mane, whispering calm words as you buckle straps. Horses are nearly as valuable as knights themselves, and losing one is a disgrace. You know their moods better than anyone, when one will bite, when one will shy, when one needs a softer touch. In battle, your knight may ride in shining armour, but it's you who ensures the horse carries him there, and then comes the fighting. Not real war, not yet, but tournaments, practice drills, endless sparring. You stand at the edge of the tilt yard, handing your knight his lance, praying he doesn't unseat himself in front of the crowd. When he rides, you cheer. When he falls, you scramble to his side, and if, God forbid, he breaks a bone, you are the one who carries him back to his chamber, who tends his wounds, who fetches the surgeon. You are servant, medic, cheerleader, and sometimes shield. A quirky tidbit. Some squires were expected to sleep at the foot of their knight's bed, ready to serve at any hour. Imagine being woken at midnight because your master wants wine or forgot to polish his dagger. Romance fades fast under those conditions. Still, you dream, because one day, if you serve faithfully, you'll kneel before your lord, a sword will touch your shoulder, and you'll rise a knight yourself. That dream keeps you going through the endless chores. And then there's the less glamorous side. When your knight relieves himself on campaign, you hold the pot. When he loses his temper, you take the blame. When he drops his glove, You fetch it before it touches mud. Some joke that squires are knights without the glory, just the blisters. You laugh because it's true. Yet you also catch glimpses of the world others never see. You march in retinues, watch battles from the edges, and learn strategies whispered in tents. You hear secrets of lords and ladies, gossip of kings, rumours of war. You're not important, but you're present, and presence is a kind of power. Later, when you're older, those memories may guide you or haunt you. Historians still debate how many squires ever actually became knights. Some did, rising high, earning lands and titles. Others languished, dismissed or forgotten, their dreams of knighthood fading as they aged into servants. It depended on luck, connections, and whether their master deemed them worthy. For every squire who rose, another likely died polishing armour for a man who never remembered his name. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could say, "Oh, I follow a man around carrying his stuff," which makes you sound less like a knight in training and more like a medieval backpack. As evening falls, you carry your knight's gear back inside, wipe the sweat from your brow, and collapse onto your straw pallet. Your arms ache from hauling lances, your legs tremble from running errands. But when you close your eyes, you picture yourself in shining armour, spurs glinting, banner snapping in the wind. Maybe one day it will be you charging across the field, not fetching another man's wine. Until then, you polish, you serve, you obey. You're the knight squire, the dreamer standing in the shadow of glory, the servant who dares to hope, the boy who believes that someday the rod will fall not on his back, but on the enemy's. The clang of steel and the smell of horses vanish. Now the air is heavier, thicker, choking with a stench no polish or prayer could ever scrub away. Bells toll slowly, their echoes hanging in the grey sky. You are no longer a squire dreaming of knighthood. Tonight you are a plague barrier, and every toll of the bell is both a summons and a warning. The year is marked by fear. Pestilence creeps through the town, unseen but everywhere. The Black Death, the great mortality, has arrived. You don't need scholars to tell you its name. You see it written on the faces of the living, pale with terror, and on the bodies of the dead, blotched and bloated. The carts wait in the square, wheels caked with mud, ropes frayed, iron rims rusted. Beside them lies your shovel, your rope, and your courage, or what's left of it. Your task is simple on paper. Collect the dead, carry them away, bury them deep. In practice, it is a waking nightmare. You trudge door to door, sometimes called by desperate families, sometimes guided only by silence. A shuttered window, a door left ajar, the smell of decay seeping out. That's enough to tell you what waits inside. You cover your nose with a rag soaked in vinegar, though it hardly helps. The air is thick, foul, heavy with disease. Your hands tremble, but you push through. You find them everywhere. In beds, twisted in final agony. In streets, collapsed mid-step. In taverns, faces slumped into unfinished mugs of ale. Some lie surrounded by weeping kin, others utterly alone. You wrap them in sheets, drag them to your cart, muttering half prayers because no priest will come this far. The clergy are dying too, and even those still alive fear this duty. That leaves it to you. Historians still argue whether plague buriers were brave or reckless. Some accounts describe them as heroes, paid by towns to risk their lives, working tirelessly to keep streets clear. Others accuse them of being drunkards and thieves, looting corpses as they hauled them away. Perhaps both are true. Hunger gnaws at you, fear tempts you, and pockets are easy to search when no one else dares touch the body. The cart grows heavy. Wheels creak, horses snort nervously, as if they too sense the burden they pull. You climb onto the driver's bench, whip in hand, and the cart lurches forward toward the mass graves dug outside the walls. You pass through streets emptied of laughter, shutters nailed shut, silence broken only by coughs in the distance. Children peek from doorways, eyes wide with dread. They cross themselves as you pass, some spitting to ward off evil. You're not just a burier, you're an omen, a quirky tidbit. Some believe that simply looking at a plague burier too long could bring misfortune. Others swore that burying the dead gave you immunity, as though handling so much death turned you untouchable. You wish that were true. The truth is, you live on borrowed time. Each breath you take near a corpse may be the one that infects you. Each bite of bread, handled with dirty hands, may carry the pestilence deeper. You pray, but prayers feel small. You reach the burial ground. The pit yawns before you, a trench dug wide and deep, lined with lime. You haul bodies one by one, lowering them with rope, stacking them gently when there is space, unceremoniously when there is none. The sight burns into your mind. Limbs tangled, faces frozen mid-scream, silence absolute except for the buzzing of flies. You sprinkle lime over them, shovel dirt, whisper God rest you, even if no priest stands by. It is grim, mechanical, endless, and yet, without you, the town would drown in death. Streets would choke with bodies, disease would spread faster, despair would consume everyone. You are reviled, yes, but also necessary. A strange, bitter honour. The pay is better than most work. A few shillings a day, sometimes food, sometimes wine. Town councils know they must pay well, because few men volunteer to risk their lives like this. But money feels hollow when you wake sweating, convinced a boil has sprouted under your arm. You check every morning, every night, running fingers over your skin, praying it's only imagination. You try to distract yourself with small jokes. What do you do for a living, someone might ask. Oh, I move people. True, just not the way anyone expects. It's gallows humour, the only kind you have left. Historians still debate how plague buriers were organised. Some cities hired official crews complete with carts and uniforms. Others left it to desperate volunteers or criminals offered pardon in exchange for labour. In London, records speak of searchers who identified the dead and buriers who carried them away, working until they too fell ill. Few lasted long. Some were found slumped over their own carts, plague claiming them before the job was done. As dusk falls, you finish filling the trench. You lean on your shovel, chest heaving, sweat soaking your tunic. The ground looks deceptively peaceful now, a mound of earth smoothed flat, as though hiding the chaos beneath. You wipe your brow, glance at the fading sun, and wonder how many more pits you will dig before this ends. The truth? Too many. You trudge back to town, cart empty, arms heavy. The bells toll again, announcing another death, another task. Tomorrow you will start again, because death does not sleep, and neither can you. You are the plague burier, the one who drags sorrow from houses, who fills trenches with silence, who works with death so others might cling to life. You know your time is short, but until it runs out, you shovel, you haul, you bury. And when you finally join the pit yourself, another will take your shovel, because this job never ends until the pestilence itself does. The tolling of plague bells fades, the shovel slips from your hands, and for a moment you breathe as though life might taste sweet again. And indeed, tonight it does, but in a different way. You're no longer trudging with a cart of corpses, Instead, you stand in a warm, smoky kitchen, the air thick with steam, malt, and bubbling yeast. Tonight, you're an alewife, one of the countless women who brewed beer in the medieval world, not as a hobby, not for fun, but as a livelihood. The hearth glows with red heat, kettles boil, and the smell of barley mash seeps into everything, your clothes, your hair, even your skin. Buckets line the wall, brimming with water drawn from the well. You stir the mash with a wooden paddle, sweat dripping into the froth. This is no small task. Beer is food, drink, and medicine in one. In towns where water is foul, beer is safer, boiled in the brewing process. Children drink it, labourers depend on it, nobles enjoy stronger versions. Brewing isn't just business, it's survival. Your day begins before dawn, crushing malt, measuring hops or herbs, kindling the fire beneath your copper kettle. As the grains boil, a sticky sweetness fills the air. You skim the froth, mutter prayers, and wait. Brewing is half science, half sorcery. Too little time, and it sours. Too much heat, and it scorches. You rely on instinct, memory, and the wisdom of mothers and grandmothers who brewed before you. You are not alone. In the Middle Ages, alewives ran much of the small-scale brewing in towns and villages. Men often worked fields or fought wars, while women brewed at home, selling jugs of ale to neighbours. It was common, almost ordinary, until money and reputation entered the picture. Then the work became a tightrope walk between profit and peril. Your ale must taste right. Too watery, and customers accuse you of cheating. Too strong, and the bailiff fines you for wasting grain. The assize of ale, yes, there were actual medieval laws governing beer, set prices and quality. Officials known as ale conners even roamed towns, tasting brews to ensure fairness. One famous tale says they wore leather breeches, sat on ale-soaked benches, and judged quality by how sticky their trousers became. Imagine that as your Yelp review system. And then there are the whispers. Alewives were often accused of witchcraft. Why? Because your trade looks suspicious to outsiders. You stir great steaming cauldrons, muttering under your breath. You keep herbs, wormwood, heather, yarrow, that double as charms in folk medicine. You wear pointed hats so customers can see you in crowded markets. You keep a cat to chase mice from your grain. Put those together, and suddenly the neighbours think you're brewing more than beer. Historians still argue whether the image of the alewife directly inspired the later stereotype of the witch, but the overlap is uncanny. Pointy hat, bubbling cauldron, cat. Sound familiar? Your tavern, if you're lucky enough to run one, is little more than a smoky room with benches and barrels. Neighbours crowd in, drinking, gossiping, singing bawdy songs. A few coins jingle in your apron pocket, payment for mugs you serve, yet money flows as quickly as ale. You must pay for grain, for firewood, for the fines if your brew is too weak. Some days you make a profit, others you barely break even. Still, customers return because everyone needs ale. A quirky detail. Some ales were so thick they were eaten with spoons, more porridge than drink. Others were flavoured with odd additions, dandelions, ivy, even crab claws, depending on local tradition. You know that not every experiment ends well. Once you brewed with too much wormwood, and half the village spent the night stumbling as though enchanted. You still hear jokes about it at market. Despite the ridicule, your work carries weight. Beer fuels labour. Men who build walls, women who weave cloth, even priests who copy manuscripts, they all sip your brew. Without alewives, towns would thirst and economies would slow. yet respect is rare. Men joke about watered ale, accuse you of greed, call you dishonest. Satirical poems mock alewives as cheats, pulling pints with one hand while cutting purses with the other. It stings, but you keep stirring your kettle. Words don't pay the rent, beer does. The danger is real too. Brewing is hot, exhausting work. Flames burn your arms, boiling mash scalds your skin, heavy barrels strain your back. The fumes alone can make you dizzy, and always the fear of failure looms. One bad batch, one spoiled keg, and your reputation could crumble. Customers talk and gossip spreads faster than fire. In a town where survival depends on trust, that could ruin you. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could smile sweetly and say, "Oh, I turn water into something people actually want to drink." Not bad for a miracle worker without a priest's robes. Historians still debate how much power alewives really held. Some see them as independent businesswomen, earning their own coin in a world that often restricted female labour. Others argue they were exploited, fined and slandered into poverty. The truth may be both. Some alewives prospered, passing taverns to their daughters. Others were dragged before courts, punished for dishonesty or simply for success. As evening falls, you ladle ale into mugs, customers' laughter rising over the crackle of fire. For a moment the world feels alive again, lighter than plague trenches or battlefield tents. You lean on your counter, wipe sweat from your brow, and let yourself smile. Tomorrow will bring new brews, new complaints, new rumours, but tonight the tavern is warm, the coins are real, and the barrels are full. You are the alewife, the brewer of courage, the keeper of gossip, the one who turns grain and water into the lifeblood of the town. Some will mock you, others will fear you, but all will drink your ale, and as long as they do, you will endure. The warmth of the tavern fades, and the clinking of mugs dies away. Morning light seeps into the narrow lanes, and a new sound takes over. The clear, carrying clang of a handbell. Tonight, though really it feels like an endless day stretched through centuries, you are the town crier, the human newsfeed of the medieval world. You rise early, wrap your cloak tight against the chill, and grip the heavy brass bell that marks your authority. In your other hand, a parchment roll crackles with official words. Your throat already aches, because your job is simple but brutal. You shout until everyone hears. It doesn't matter if they listen. It matters that you ring the bell, cry the words, and keep moving. The marketplace is already stirring. Bakers haul loaves from smoky ovens, the scent of warm bread fighting with the smell of manure. Stall owners rattle shutters open, chickens squawk, dogs bark. You stride into the square, lift your bell high, and ring. The clang echoes off stone walls, turning heads, silencing chatter for a heartbeat. Then your voice booms, "Hear ye, hear ye! By order of His Majesty, new tolls are set upon the southern gate." Groans ripple through the crowd. A farmer mutters curses, a merchant sighs, a boy spits into the mud. You keep reading, your voice steady. Whether they cheer or jeer is not your concern. You are the messenger. You announce royal decrees, tax changes, curfews, even executions. Your words are law, not because you speak them, but because the crown stands behind you. And yet, your job is far from glamorous. Once the words leave your mouth, you are fair game. People throw insults, rotten vegetables, sometimes worse. You've had to dodge stones more than once. A man who delivers bad news rarely earns thanks. Historians still argue whether town criers were respected heralds or barely tolerated nuisances. Some records call them trusted officials, well paid and uniformed. Others describe them as mocked and pelted, scraping by on meagre wages. Both images fit, depending on the day. You walk on, bell clanging, voice raised again. Hear ye, all taverns shall close at sundown, lest mischief take root in the dark. A drunk groans from a doorway. You smirk. He'll forget the proclamation before he even sobers. But you keep going, because forgetting isn't the same as not hearing. Your duty is to deliver, not to persuade. Quirky tidbit. Some towns actually required criers to repeat messages 3 times at 3 different spots, just to ensure everyone heard. Literacy was low, printing presses not yet common, so your lungs were the newspaper. And because you could carry the king's voice into every alley, your memory had to be sharp. Forget a word and you risk misquoting the crown. Misquote the crown and you risk the stocks. Or worse, no pressure. You pause at the pillory where a thief slumps with hands locked in wood. Children jeer, pelting him with onion skins. You raise your bell, announce his crime, and declare the hours of his punishment. People nod, satisfied. Your words make the shame official. Tomorrow it could be another thief, or maybe you, if you stumble too far. Sometimes the messages you carry are worse. During plague you cry curfews and quarantines, warning people not to gather. During war you announce levies, ordering men to muster. During famine you proclaim rationing, though your own belly growls. These are the moments when you hate your bell most. You're not the cause, but people see your face when they hear the news. They remember you, not the parchment. Still, the job has its odd perks. You hear everything. Gossip swirls around you like smoke. Traders slip you tidbits in exchange for hints of royal policy. Innkeepers ply you with ale, hoping you'll favour their tavern in announcements. You know who's marrying, who's dying, who's cheating and dying. Information clings to you like burrs. You're both news giver and rumour collector. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could grin and say, I'm an influencer. True enough, though your platform is cobblestones and your algorithm is how loudly you can shout before your voice cracks. You continue your rounds, bell swinging, words echoing. In some towns, criers wore bright liveries with crests stitched in, so people recognise them instantly. In others, you're just another cloaked figure in the crowd, shouting until your throat bleeds. Your pay? Sometimes steady wages from the town council, sometimes coins dropped by grateful or guilty listeners. A feast one week, famine the next. Historians still debate whether criers enjoyed authority or endured contempt. Evidence points both ways. In some cities they were trusted, even feared. In others, they were comic figures in popular songs, ridiculed as fools with bells. You feel both roles as you walk. Dignity in your stride, mockery in the tomatoes splattering at your feet. As evening falls, you return home hoarse, cloak damp with spit and spoiled food. You light a candle, massage your throat and sip weak ale. Tomorrow you'll rise again, bell in hand, ready to announce whatever fresh decree lands in your palm. For now you are the town crier, the voice of authority, the echo of the king, the man everyone hears but few truly listen to. And in that strange, half-respected, half-reviled role, you'll keep ringing, keep shouting, until your voice is the only thing people remember from a day's news. The clang of your bell dies, the crowd drifts away, and silence creeps back into the square. But now the silence feels heavier, sharpened, as if the air itself holds its breath. You're no longer the town crier, voice of decrees. Tonight you stand on the scaffold, hands steady, blade gleaming. Tonight you are the executioner. You arrive early, before dawn, cloaked in anonymity. Few know your name, though all know your shadow. You sharpen your sword or axe with methodical strokes, each scrape of whetstone ringing louder than church bells. This is your craft. Not weaving, not smithing, not brewing. Killing. Cleanly, efficiently, and in public. The irony is brutal. You're despised for what you do, yet the law collapses without you. The prisoner is dragged forward, sometimes a thief trembling in rags, sometimes a noble, proud even in chains, sometimes a traitor spitting curses to the very end. You don't ask what they did. That's not your concern. The court condemns, the priest absolves, and you finish. You know the ritual by heart. The crowd gathers, murmuring like waves. Children sit on fathers' shoulders. Vendors sell pies and ale. People love a spectacle, even one soaked in blood. You step forward, masked or hooded, though the disguise fools no one. Neighbours cross the street when they see you, but here they press close, eager for the stroke. Historians still argue how executioners were chosen. Some say it was hereditary, passed from father to son, a grim family trade. Others claim it was punishment itself. Criminals spared the rope if they agreed to wield it for others. Evidence points both ways, depending on country and century. Perhaps you were born into this life. Perhaps you stumbled into it by misfortune. Either way, there's no leaving once you begin. The stigma clings forever. You raise your blade. The prisoner kneels. The crowd hushes. One breath, one heartbeat, one stroke, and the head falls thudding into straw. Blood sprays, steam rising in the morning chill. The crowd roars approval, or gasps horror, or jeers the corpse. You step back, wipe your blade, and nod, duty done. A quirky detail. Executioners sometimes doubled as healers. Sounds absurd, but it's true. Because they knew anatomy from their grisly work, some offered treatments, setting bones, brewing medicines, selling charms. People spat on them in daylight, then crept to their doors at night begging cures. Strange how fear and need walk hand in hand. And yet, your job isn't just swinging blades. Hanging, burning, breaking on the wheel. These two fall to you. Each method requires skill. A botched execution shames you, prolonging agony before a howling crowd. One clean stroke earns grudging respect. 2, 3, 4 blows. You'll be cursed for life. You practice relentlessly, not because you enjoy it, but because precision is your only shield. You carry other burdens too. You're paid more than many labourers, sometimes even given a house by the town. But the price is isolation. No one wants to shake your hand. Children point and whisper. Tavern keepers serve you last. Some cities even forced executioners to live outside the walls, marking their homes with red. Respectable folk pretend they don't see you until they need you. Here's your joke for the night. If someone asked what you do for a living, you could grin and say, "Oh, I help people get ahead." Gallows humour, sharp as your axe. Still, you see things no one else does. The trembling of nobles who once mocked peasants. The calm acceptance of men who whisper prayers until the end. The rage of those who spit, curse and struggle. You see justice and injustice both, served under the same sun. You wonder sometimes whether your blade truly upholds order or simply entertains crowds. Historians still debate whether executions deterred crime or fueled it, making violence a public ritual. You don't know the answer. You only know the weight of your axe. You remember the first time you lifted it. Your hands shook. The prisoner's eyes met yours, pleading. The crowd shouted. Your master nodded. And when you struck, when the body fell limp, something inside you broke, or hardened. Perhaps both. Since then, Each stroke has grown steadier, but the memory never fades. The square empties. The scaffold is washed with buckets of water, blood trickling into the dirt. The crowd disperses, already chattering about markets, debts, marriages. Life goes on, but you remain, wiping your blade, folding your cloak, returning home alone. Always alone. At night, you sit by your hearth, coins stacked from your day's work. More than a weaver earns, more than a baker, enough to live comfortably, if not peacefully. Yet the silence presses close. You think of the eyes of those you've struck, of the weight of lives ended by your hands. You wonder how many sins cling to you now, heavier even than those the sin-eater choose. Still, tomorrow the bell may toll again. Another sentence, another scaffold, another stroke. You'll climb the steps, raise the blade, and do what must be done, because you are the executioner, the man cursed and necessary, feared and needed, the final hand of law. And until death takes you too, you will swing. The roar of the crowd, the flash of steel, even the weight of your executioner's axe fades into silence. Now it's replaced by something altogether different, something quieter, but no less punishing. A creak, a groan, a steady rhythm that gnaws at your bones. Tonight you aren't feared by crowds or blessed with coins for a single stroke. Tonight you step into the belly of a giant machine, the tread wheel. And you, unlucky soul, are the tread wheel turner. Before you, a massive wooden wheel towers higher than a man. Its planks are polished, not by care but by suffering. Endless footsteps, barefoot or booted, grinding against them day after day. It looks almost like a monstrous hamster wheel, except the rodent inside is human, and instead of amusement, this contraption devours sweat, muscles, and sometimes lives. The ropes coil around thick axles, pulleys strain, and the wheel waits for you. You climb in. The wood is rough under your palms, sticky with pitch in some places, slick with old sweat in others. You press your shoulder against a beam, plant your feet on the plank and step. The wheel shudders. Another step and another, and soon you are walking upward yet going nowhere. Above you, ropes tighten, gears groan, and blocks of stone lift slowly from the ground. One step from you becomes 1 inch of cathedral rising heavenward. The first minutes aren't bad. Step, breathe, step, breathe. The rhythm lulls you, but then the strain builds. Your calves ache, your thighs burn, sweat beads down your neck. The air inside the wheel grows hotter, thicker, staler with every turn. There's no breeze here, only the press of your own breath and the stink of labour. You wipe your brow, blink through the haze and keep going. Outside, masons shout instructions. The foreman barks orders, timing your steps to the hoist. Men on scaffolds cheer as stones settle into place. They see progress. You feel only exhaustion. They admire towers stretching higher. You know every inch was paid for with circles carved into your muscles. Cathedrals don't rise on prayers. They rise on treadwheel turners like you. Historians still argue who bore this burden. Were treadwheel turners hired labourers, desperate enough to trade health for coin? Or were they criminals, forced to trudge as punishment, their labour feeding salvation they might never see? Some even whisper donkeys or oxen were tried in the wheels, but the truth is animals spook too easily, collapse too quickly. No, it had to be men. And tonight, that man is you. The monotony is the worst. Hours stretch like years. The wheel turns and you walk, and the view never changes. Sometimes you lose sense of time altogether. Was that an hour? Or 10? You can't say. All you know is that your legs tremble, your back screams, and the wheel still groans. A quirky tidbit. Some of these tread wheels still survive today, silent in cathedral towers. Tourists marvel at them, snapping photos, chuckling about medieval gym equipment. You smile bitterly at the thought. They see quaint relics. You remember sweat soaking the planks, the sting of rope burns, the thud of a man fainting mid-step. There's nothing quaint about it. And oh, the danger. One misstep, one stumble, and the wheel jerks. The ropes snap taut, the block above crashes down, and men scatter like startled birds. You've seen scaffolds shatter, lives crushed under stone. You've heard the screams echo long after the dust settles. Every step you take could be the one that kills someone above, or yourself. Your pay is pitiful. A handful of coins, sometimes bread and ale. The steward hands it over without meeting your eyes, as if ashamed, or maybe just indifferent. Yet without you the stones don't rise, the walls don't grow, and the bishop's vision of a heaven on earth remains nothing but lines on parchment. You are invisible, yet indispensable. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asks what you do for a living, you could shrug and say, I travel a lot but never get anywhere. Congratulations, you've invented the medieval treadmill, no health benefits included. But even in drudgery, there are glimpses of beauty. When you pause for water, you look up through scaffolds and see stained glass glowing in the sun, colours alive with holy fire. You hear choirs practising, voices echoing through unfinished walls, a sound so pure it almost makes you forget the ache in your knees. Almost. Then the foreman snaps his whip, and you climb back in, because beauty doesn't build itself. Historians still debate whether labourers like you took pride in this work. Some argue they must have, to endure so much misery for so little coin. Others say pride was meaningless when survival was the only goal. You don't know which is truer, but you feel both. Bitterness when the steward sneers at your sweat-streaked face, and pride when you see the tower rise one story higher. The day stretches on. Sunlight shifts across the yard, shadows lengthen. Your legs feel like lead. Each step rattles your bones. You taste blood in your mouth from breathing too hard. Yet still you walk, because stones must rise, and no one else will lift them. At dusk, the foreman finally calls a halt. You stagger out of the wheel, legs trembling, back bent. The rope unwinds, the crane groans to rest, the masons scatter to taverns. You sit on the ground, gulping water, chest heaving, staring up at the half-built tower. Tomorrow it will rise again. Tomorrow you will walk again. Tomorrow the wheel will turn, and so will you. You lie in your straw bed that night, but rest doesn't come easy. Your legs twitch, as though still walking. Your dreams are circles, endless circles, lifting stones you never see set in place. You wake at dawn, sweat soaking your shirt, heart pounding with the phantom rhythm of the wheel. And then you rise because there's no choice. You are the treadwheel turner, the engine hidden in wood and rope, the man who goes nowhere so others may reach heaven, the ghost who walks in circles until stone meets sky. And until the last block is set, you will walk, the wheel finally stops. Your legs still twitch, even as you lie down, haunted by the endless circle. But before you can catch your breath, fate deals you another strange task. This time, you're not trudging in filth or hauling stone. You're crouched in a smoky chamber that smells of sulphur, vinegar, and something sharp that stings your throat. Shelves sag under jars of powders, flasks of cloudy liquid, and bundles of dried herbs. At the centre, a man in ragged robes peers into a crucible, muttering to himself. And you, Lucky you are his assistant. You are the alchemist's apprentice, the one who grinds, fetches, risks, burns, and inhales poisons, all in the name of secrets that may never exist. The room is half workshop, half chapel. Strange symbols cover the walls, circles and triangles inked in soot, meant to guide unseen forces. A single candle flickers, casting warped shadows. You crouch by the mortar and pestle, grinding mercury and sulphur into a paste that shimmers oddly in the dim light. The alchemist insists this mixture may one day transmute lead into gold. You nod, though in your heart you suspect it's more likely to kill you before it fills your purse. The tasks are endless. Stir powders until your arms ache. Fan the furnace until your face blisters from heat. Scrape dried crusts from alembics and crucibles, breathing in dust that makes your nose bleed. Every day you risk explosions, one wrong mixture, and the chamber erupts in fire. Sometimes the walls are stained black, reminders of near disasters. Sometimes your eyebrows don't survive the week. Historians still argue whether alchemists were frauds, dreamers, or proto-scientists. Some see them as charlatans, preying on nobles' greed for gold. Others see them as pioneers, stumbling toward chemistry without knowing it. The truth is probably both. They sought impossible things. Eternal life, philosopher's stones, elixirs of youth. But in their fumbling they discovered acids, alloys, distillation. And you, their coughing assistant, paid the price for those tiny steps forward. Quirky tidbit. Many assistants kept notebooks of their own, secretly recording recipes when the master wasn't looking. Of course, half the recipes were nonsense. Distill rainwater under a waxing moon, add powdered unicorn horn. But occasionally, something useful appeared. Alcohol stronger than wine, pigments brighter than earth. Some of those side discoveries survived into modern chemistry. Imagine risking your lungs on dragon's blood resin, only to accidentally invent good red paint. The danger doesn't end with fire. Mercury poisons slowly, seeping through skin, twisting your nerves. Arsenic powders burn your throat. Lead makes your fingers shake. You've seen assistants waste away, coughing until they collapse, teeth blackening, eyes wild. And yet, you keep working, because coins jingle when the master sells his concoctions to gullible nobles, and you get your share. Small, but enough to eat. Your master mutters about patronage. Princes and bishops fund alchemists hoping for gold or immortality. They rarely get either, but they get showmanship. Glowing powders, liquids that fizz, smoke that billows. You're the one behind the curtain, setting it all up, striking flint, fetching water, hiding failures. When experiments fail, and they often do, you're the one who cleans the mess. When they succeed, rarely, you're the one who envies the credit. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could say, "Oh, I turn lead into headaches." The chamber grows hotter as the furnace roars. Tonight your master whispers of the great work, the philosopher's stone, the mythical substance said to transmute base metals into gold and grant eternal life. He waves a parchment filled with strange diagrams, his eyes shining with mania. You, meanwhile, cough into your sleeve, wondering whether you'll live long enough to see tomorrow, let alone eternity. And yet, there's a spark of fascination in you too. When powders glow green, when glass flasks bubble with colours never seen in nature, when smoke curls into patterns like angels' wings, it feels like magic. You dream of discovering something yourself, something real. Maybe not gold, maybe not immortality, but something useful. fire that burns brighter, medicine that heals faster. You grind harder, eyes watering, heart aching with impossible hope. Historians still debate whether assistants like you were exploited or trained. Did masters ever truly teach, or did they keep secrets close, using helpers only as hands? Surviving letters suggest both. Some masters trusted apprentices, others used them like disposable tools. Looking at your raw, blistered fingers, you suspect the latter, but maybe, just maybe, one day, the knowledge will be yours. As night deepens, the chamber reeks of smoke and vinegar. Your head spins, your stomach lurches. The master cackles softly over a crucible, convinced he's one step closer to gold. You know better. Still, you sweep the floor, label jars, and keep the fire steady. Because who knows? The next experiment might change everything, or just blow the roof off. You stumble to your cot in the corner, body trembling, ears ringing with the hiss of boiling flasks. Dreams come uneasy, filled with visions of molten gold pouring endlessly, only to vanish when you reach for it. Tomorrow you'll wake, grind powders again, and cough until your chest burns. Such is the life of an alchemist's assistant, half servant, half scientist, half victim of ambition. You are the hand that stirs, the lungs that breathe poison, the shadow behind a master chasing impossible dreams. And until either discovery or death ends your work, you will grind, fan and burn, hoping for glory but settling for survival. The alchemist's smoky chamber fades. The fumes leave your lungs, and now another kind of stench takes over. The sour, metallic reek of bad breath mixed with rot. No bubbling crucibles, no muttered formulas. Tonight your tools are iron pliers, rough wooden wedges, and maybe, if you're lucky, a rag to stuff in a patient's mouth. You are the medieval dentist, though nobody calls you that. To most, you're a barber surgeon, a tooth drawer, the poor soul people crawl to when the pain in their jaw drives them mad. The clinic is nothing more than a bench in the marketplace, perhaps a stool outside a tavern. Sometimes you work from a stall hung with crude drawings of teeth, sometimes from the barber's shop where you also cut hair and lance boils. You don't need a license, you don't need training. All you need is a steady grip, a strong back, and the ability to ignore screams. Your patient today is a burly miller, face red with agony, clutching his cheek as if trying to hold his skull together. He slumps onto the bench, groaning. Neighbours gather close, because in this world, dentistry is also entertainment. You spit on your hands, grip the iron pliers and pry his mouth open. The tooth is black, swollen gums gleaming with pus. You mutter a quick prayer, position the pliers, and yank. The sound is worse than the scream, a sickening crunch, a tearing pop as the tooth rips free. Blood gushes, the man howls, the crowd cheers or winces depending on their stomachs. You raise the tooth high for all to see, crimson dripping, a small victory against rot. The miller, pale and shaking, spits blood, but his pain eases. He thanks you, or maybe curses you, then stumbles away lighter by one rotten fang. This is your work. Tooth by tooth, pain by pain. No anaesthetic, no numbing, no soft music in the background. Just raw agony and brute strength. Historians still argue whether tooth drawing was a respected craft or a last resort. Some towns had trained barber surgeons who specialised in extractions. Others left it to travelling quacks who promised miracle cures and left trails of broken jaws. Quirky tidbit. Some dentists advertised with strings of pulled teeth nailed to their stalls like gruesome trophies. Others hired musicians to play loudly during extractions, hoping to drown out the screams, and still others offered charms or prayers to protect teeth from decay, as if words could outmatch worms. Yes, worms, because many people believed toothache was caused by tiny worms gnawing inside the tooth. You laugh, but after seeing some of the horrors inside mouths, you almost believe it yourself. Your tools are crude. Iron pliers, sometimes more like blacksmith's tongs than surgical instruments. Wedges to pry teeth loose, hooks to dig into gums. You sterilize nothing, unless you count rinsing in wine or wiping on your apron. Patients often faint. Some bleed heavily. Infections follow, sometimes worse than the original toothache. But most accept the risk. A rotten tooth can kill just as surely as a sword, spreading infection through the body. Better to suffer one moment of agony than weeks of festering. The barber's pole tells the story. Its red and white stripes symbolize blood and bandages, a reminder that your trade is more than haircuts. People come to you for boils, broken bones, and yes, teeth. You wield the razor and the saw, equally ready to trim a beard or amputate a finger. Dentistry is just one more bloody string in your bow. The pay varies. A wealthy merchant might slip you silver for removing a molar. A poor peasant offers a chicken or bread, or thanks muttered through swollen lips. Either way, you earn more than a farmhand, but less than a skilled craftsman. Enough to scrape by, not enough to escape the cries. And oh, the cries, they haunt you. Every night as you close your eyes, you hear echoes of shrieks, the crunch of bone, the snap of roots tearing. Sometimes you dream you're the one in the chair, pliers closing in, your own mouth split with pain. You wake sweating, clutching your jaw. Then morning comes and another line of sufferers waits. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could grin and say, "I bring smiles." Though admittedly, most of your patients aren't smiling when you're done. Historians still debate how widespread tooth drawing really was. Some argue most people simply endured pain until death, while others point to records of bustling barber surgeons in every town. Archaeologists studying medieval skulls find shocking numbers of decayed or missing teeth, proof of sugar's slow invasion through trade and the lack of hygiene. Whether you were common or rare, one thing is clear. When the pain became unbearable, people found their way to you. As night falls, you clean your tools in ale, scrape clots from your pliers, and hang your lantern outside. Another patient stumbles forward, clutching her cheek, tears streaming. You sigh, gesture to the stool, and set your hand steady. Because for all the screams, all the blood, all the disgust, your work matters. Without you, pain festers, infection spreads, and lives end sooner. You are a butcher, yes, but also a healer, in the only way you can be. You are the medieval dentist, the tooth drawer, the bone cruncher, the necessary tormentor. Feared, mocked, sometimes cursed, but always summoned when agony outweighs fear. And until better tools, better medicines, and better knowledge arrive, your pliers will keep pulling, your hands will keep steady, and your ears will keep ringing with screams. The screams of your dental patients fade, the taste of blood and iron vanishes from your hands, and now you find yourself in yet another theatre of human need. Not one of pain to be ended, but of sorrow to be performed. The street is lined with mourners in black. The church bell tolls slow and heavy, and eyes turn not only to the coffin, but to you. Tonight, you are the professional mourner. It begins with a summons. A wealthy family sends word. Their patriarch has died, and they want the world to know his departure was worthy of respect. But grief is unpredictable, and sometimes too quiet. Not every widow can wail on command. Not every son can collapse in dramatic sobs. That's where you come in. You're hired to cry, to tear your hair, to beat your chest. Grief as performance, sorrow for sale. You arrive dressed in dark wool, face powdered faintly to look pale, eyes rimmed red from onion juice rubbed beforehand. The family doesn't ask if your tears are genuine, they only care that they flow. You kneel by the coffin, clutching your shawl, and let the sobs begin. Loud, theatrical, unrestrained. Your voice echoes off the church walls, mingling with the incense smoke and the drone of priests. Other mourners glance at you, some admiring the fervour, others muttering that your grief seems almost too good to be true. That's the point. Historians still argue how widespread this practice really was. In ancient Rome and Greece, paid mourners were common, women hired to wail and sing dirges. In medieval Europe, evidence is patchier. Some chronicles mention mutes, or weepers, who led funeral processions, while others dismiss the idea as superstition or exaggeration. But the human urge to display grief is universal, and whether in whispered records or village custom, your role is clear. To give voice to sorrow others cannot, or will not, express. You cry until your throat aches. You tear at your hair until your scalp burns. You scatter ashes on your head and fall to your knees as though consumed by despair. Neighbours whisper, such devotion, such anguish. The deceased must have been loved dearly. You know better. You never met him. You're here because silver crossed palms, not because love pulled heartstrings. But in the theatre of mourning, authenticity matters less than effect. Quirky tidbit. In some places, mourners were expected to measure their volume. Too quiet and it looked insincere. Too loud and it seemed disrespectful to the priest. Imagine calibrating your sobs like a bell ringer tuning his tolls. Some even carried small drums or rattles to heighten the drama, turning funerals into half ritual, half spectacle. The payment is better than most grim trades. A few coins, a loaf, sometimes even clothing. Nobles pay handsomely because appearances matter most at their funerals. The more people weep, the greater the honour for the dead. But with the money comes stigma. Once the service ends, neighbours avoid your gaze. Who trusts a person whose tears are rented? Children mock you in the streets, mimicking your howls. Yet when death strikes their homes, their parents may hire you anyway. Hypocrisy flows as freely as tears. You learn to pace yourself. A funeral can last hours, with processions winding through streets, dirges sung in endless verses. You cry in waves, rising and falling like the tide, timing your wails to the lifting of the coffin, the final prayers, the closing of the grave. At the climax, when earth thuds onto the coffin lid, you unleash your loudest sobs, collapsing as though grief has torn you apart. Families nod, satisfied. They believe their loved one has been honoured properly. You believe your throat may never recover. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could shrug and say, "Oh, I cry on command." In another age, maybe you'd be an actor. In this one, you're just a mourner for hire. But even in pretense, something real seeps through. As you watch widows clutch coffins, as you see mothers bury children, sometimes your tears are not entirely fake. Sorrow is contagious. You may be paid to wail, but the grief around you seeps into your bones. Some nights you go home and weep alone, though no coin demands it. Historians still debate whether professional mourners helped communities heal or cheapen death. Were they ritual guides, giving structure to sorrow, or charlatans exploiting grief? The records don't settle the matter. All you know is that families look calmer when you finish. Maybe your howls carry their pain for them, letting them breathe again. Maybe that's worth something. As dusk falls, you peel off your dark shawl, wash your swollen face, and count the coins in your pouch. Enough for bread, maybe for candles. You collapse on your straw bed, throat raw, eyes stinging from onion, and tears both real and false. Tomorrow another bell will toll, another coffin will wait, another family will summon you. You will cry again, not for love, not for loss, but because it is your trade. You are the professional mourner, the voice of grief when silence is unbearable, the public face of sorrow when private tears are not enough. Hired, mocked, sometimes believed, sometimes doubted, but always summoned when death demands a chorus. And until the last bell tolls for you, you will cry. The wails of funerals and the theatrics of mourning fade, but the stench of everyday life waits for no one. Death comes occasionally, filth comes daily. Tonight, you take on the work no minstrel sings about, no priest blesses, no noble ever admits exists. You're not the gong farmer hauling great cartloads of muck from cesspits. No, you are his quieter, humbler cousin, the gong scourer. Your duty is not just to remove filth, but to scrub it, scour it, polish the very buckets and privies until they can be used again. If the gong farmer digs in shadows, you live in daylight, face to face with the waste of everyone around you. The morning begins in the manor yard with a clatter. Chamber pots, dozens of them, are dumped onto the cobblestones, their wooden lids rattling, steam rising from contents too fresh for comfort. A steward or housemaid gives curt orders. See to it quickly. They will not dirty their hands further. That is your work. You roll up your sleeves, grip your ladle, and begin the first of many grim rituals. You tip a pot into a trench dug along the side of the yard. The slurry splashes thick and heavy, the smell hitting like a fist. You gag, but you've gagged 100 times before, and still you steady yourself. Wooden ladles scrape the sides clean. What clings is stubborn, sticky. You dig it out, dump it, and move on. Then comes water, drawn from the well or river, sometimes icy, sometimes warm if the kitchen has pity on you. You slosh it inside, shake the pot, pour it out again. Already your arms ache, but you're only beginning. Next, the scrubbing. Brushes made of hog bristle rasp against clay or wood, your knuckles cracking as you scour until your fingers bleed. Soap is rare, too precious for waste. Instead, you use sand or ash, sometimes vinegar when the master wants freshness. The ash grinds your hands raw, the vinegar burns your cuts. You bite your lip, finish one pot, then another, then another. By midday your muscles quiver as if you've been at war, though your only enemies are excrement and stains. It is humiliating work, but essential. The noble lady may have tapestries on her walls, the knight may shine in steel, the priest may preach purity, but all of them still need their chamber pots scoured. Someone has to do it, and that someone is you. Historians still argue whether gong scourers were recognised tradesmen or just the lowest servants roped into the foulest duty. In wealthier households, records hint at servants assigned only to pot cleaning. In poorer homes, the task rotated among whoever was unlucky enough to lose a quarrel. Some think guilds in big cities even had lowly subgroups for privy cleaners, though the evidence is sparse, because of course no clerk wanted to write the names of men and women who scrubbed dung for a living. A quirky fact. In some inns, cleanliness inspections were carried out by officials called ale conners, or scavengers. They weren't just testing ale. They sometimes peered into privies and buckets to judge whether establishments met standards. Imagine it. An inspector squinting into your freshly scoured chamber pot and nodding with approval, or fining the inn if it stank too much. Your brush, in a strange way, protected taverns from the law. The dangers are subtler than falling stones or swinging swords, but no less deadly. Human waste carries disease. You don't know the names, dysentery, typhus, cholera, but you know the signs. A scourer coughs and sweats, their belly cramps, their skin erupts with sores. Some waste away in weeks. Cuts on your hands sting when waste seeps in, and you pray infection won't follow. You tie rags around your fingers, but the damp loosens them quickly. Every scrub risks sickness. Every scrub is a gamble. Your payment? Pennies. Sometimes food scraps. Once in a while a kind cook sneaks you broth. But more often you're paid just enough to return the next day. Respect is rarer still. Children hold their noses when you walk by. Market wives mutter about the stink following you. Neighbours step aside. At church, no one wants the pew beside you. You are needed but never wanted. Still, you keep working. Why? Because everyone soils and everyone demands cleanliness. Without scourers, even castles would drown in stink. The irony is sharp. You are despised for handling the very thing that would destroy society if ignored. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you do, you could grin and say, "I deal with what everyone produces but no one admits to." That would end the conversation quickly, but at least it's honest. Sometimes, though, you find strange pride in your work. When you finish, and the pots stand in neat rows, clean, rinsed, smelling faintly of vinegar instead of rot, you know you've made life tolerable again. You watch a noblewoman carry her pot upstairs, oblivious to the hours of labour behind it, and you smirk. She won't thank you, but she will use it tonight. Tomorrow she'll hand it back full. Tomorrow you'll scrub again. Historians still debate whether such workers were men or women, whether they were free or bound. The silence in records proves one thing. Nobody wanted to remember you. And yet, without scourers, medieval towns would have collapsed under their own filth long before plague or famine struck. You may be invisible in chronicles, but you are essential in reality. As dusk falls, your arms tremble, your nose no longer registers the smell. You scrub the last pot, dump the last bucket, and stagger to the well to wash your hands. The water runs brown. You scrub again. The stink lingers anyway. You trudge home, aching, pockets light with coin, reputation lighter still. But tomorrow, when pots clatter again, when privies reek, when stewards glare, you'll pick up your brush and scour once more. You are the gong scourer, the silent cleaner, the forgotten servant, the one who shoulders the filth so others can sleep untroubled. Your work leaves no monuments, no songs, no names in records. But without you, every hall, every inn, every home would drown in its own shame. And so, unseen and unsung, you scrub. The stink of privies still clings to your clothes, but now you're given a different kind of stick to carry. This one not for scrubbing, but for striking. You're no longer crouched by chamber pots. Instead, you stand at the threshold of a medieval church, sunlight filtering through coloured glass, incense drifting heavy in the air. The congregation gathers, murmuring prayers, and there, padding casually down the nave, tail wagging, comes your true enemy, the parish dog. You are the dog whipper. The job is as odd as it sounds. In towns where half the population lived cheek by jowl with animals, dogs slipped into churches as freely as people did. They followed masters, chased cats, or sniffed for scraps beneath pews. Sometimes they barked mid-sermon. Sometimes they fought in the aisle. Sometimes they leapt onto the altar itself. Piety and peace shattered in a chorus of snarls. And so, a new role emerged. One person armed with a stout stick or whip, charged with chasing canines from holy ground. That person is you. Your mornings begin with patrols. You circle the yard before Mass, chasing strays from the steps, scattering mongrels nosing through the graveyard. But they are cunning, slipping behind you, darting in through side doors. So when the bell tolls and parishioners gather, you stand ready at the back, staff in hand, eyes sharp. The priest drones Latin verses, incense swirls, and parishioners kneel. Then it happens. Claws click on stone, a mutt trots confidently down the aisle. The children giggle, the priest falters. You spring forward. One sharp crack of your stick, one sharp hiss, and the intruder yelps, dashes out, tail between legs. Order restored. The priest resumes. The faithful sigh in relief. And you? You settle back into your corner, grip tightening, waiting for the next ambush. Historians still argue how widespread this role really was. Some church records mention dog whippers as official posts, complete with small wages. Others suggest it was an informal duty, given to whichever beadle or sexton had the strongest arm. The truth may lie in between. In larger parishes, a recognised office. In smaller villages, just another thankless task added to the pile. A quirky tidbit. Dog whippers often carried long tongs as well as whips. If a stubborn animal refused to leave, they'd clamp the tongs around its neck or midsection, dragging it out squealing. Imagine that scene. Holy chants in one corner, furious barking in the other, and you wrestling a hound through the door. Divine order, enforced by brute comedy. You weren't always limited to dogs either. Some churches used whippers to manage people too. Drunkards staggering in mid-service, beggars pestering parishioners, even rowdy children. They all felt the sting of your stick. In that sense, you were part usher, part constable, part animal wrangler. Respectable? Barely? Necessary? Absolutely. The pay was meagre, usually a few pennies from the parish coffers, sometimes extra coins from exasperated priests. Yet the role carried a peculiar dignity. You were a guardian of order, defender of sanctity. Parishioners might mock you in taverns, but during Mass they glanced gratefully when a mongrel was marched out tail down. Still, stigma lingered. Children whispered dog beater behind your back. Women smirked that you spent more time with hounds than with people. Men laughed that you were the priest's pet. And yet, come Sunday, they'd glare at you if a mutt so much as sniffed their shoes. You lived in the strange twilight of mockery and reliance. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked your occupation, you could grin and say, "I keep the Lord's house free of unholy howls." Not a bad title, really, though it won't earn free drinks. The dangers? More than you'd think. Dogs bite. Some latch onto your leg, drawing blood through cloth. Some carry disease. Rabies was not unknown, though no one yet named it. A single bite could fester, fever could follow, and death might come days later in choking fits. You bore scars across your hands, teeth marks on your calves, reminders that this was no simple shepherd's game. And yet, you knew the animals. You learned to read their movements, to gauge when a bark was bluff, when a growl promised teeth. You softened your strikes when a dog was harmless, drove harder when one lunged. Some mongrels even learned to avoid you altogether, slinking away the moment you lifted your staff. You became part of the church's rhythm, as essential as the bell ringer, as invisible as the cleaner of candles. Historians still debate whether the role survived past the Middle Ages. In some English towns, records mention dog whippers into the 17th century. Eventually, pews, doors, and stricter decorum replaced the need. But for centuries you stood vigilant, whip in hand, eyes sharp, keeping worship free of four-legged interruptions. Evenings brought no rest. After Mass you scouted the churchyard, chasing dogs from graves, guarding fresh mounds of earth. Families feared strays digging at shallow burials. You patrolled with torch and stick, ensuring the dead slept undisturbed. By night's end you collapsed in your straw bed, hands blistered, ears still ringing with barks and whines. You are the dog whipper, the unsung guardian of sanctity, the scourge of mongrels, the human barrier between chaos and prayer. Mocked, bitten, underpaid, yet always summoned when paws click on holy stone. And until doors are barred and dogs are tamed, you will pace the aisles, whip ready, eyes sharp, ensuring worshippers hear the word of God and not the bark of a stray. The echo of dogs yelping in church fades, and the smell of incense burns off in the night wind. But tonight's duty is darker, stranger, and infinitely more dangerous. No brushes, no whips, just a shovel, a lantern, and nerves like iron. The streets are silent, shutters close tight, while you step softly toward the graveyard. Tonight, you're a resurrectionist. That word sounds noble, almost holy, resurrection. But you know the truth. You're no saint. You're a grave robber, a supplier of bodies, a shadow whose work fuels medicine and terrifies families. The graveyard stretches before you, rows of crooked stones under the pale moon. Owls hoot from rafters. The earth is damp, soft from recent rain. Fresh mounds rise like scars on the land, and those are what you seek. Older graves are too hard, too tangled with roots. Fresh graves yield quickly, and fresh bodies fetch higher prices. Your shovel bites the earth with dull thuds. Each scrape feels louder than a church bell. You pause, breath held, waiting for shouts. None come, only silence. Minutes stretch. Sweat beads on your neck despite the chill. The soil is looser than you hoped, sliding easily aside. At last the shovel hits wood with a hollow crack. You clear the soil, pry at the lid. The coffin creaks, then splits. The smell rises instantly. Sickly sweet. Thick. Unmistakable. You gag. Press your sleeve to your face, but force yourself to keep working. You hook ropes beneath the corpse's arms and heave. Limbs flop boneless, head lolls, mouth gapes open. For a moment you swear it's whispering, but it's only your own heart pounding. Why do you do this? Because there's demand. Universities crave bodies for dissection. Physicians whisper that only by cutting flesh can they truly learn the secrets of anatomy. How the heart pumps, how lungs expand, how muscles anchor bone. But the church forbids desecration. Priests thunder that the body must rest whole until Judgment Day. Families sit vigil at fresh graves to keep men like you away. Still, coin changes everything. Scholars pay silver for what priests condemn. So here you are, trading damnation for rent money. Historians still argue how common this was in the medieval world. Some say body snatching was rare until the Renaissance, when anatomy schools flourished. Others claim it was always there, hidden, whispered about in taverns but never written in polite records. The truth is blurred because no one boasts of such work. But somebody supplied those cadavers scholars wrote about, and that somebody was you. A quirky detail. Some families hired guards to watch graves for days after burial. They sat in shifts, lanterns glowing, daring thieves to try. Others built wooden cages over coffins or piled stones as heavy as mill wheels. Later centuries even invented iron mort safes. In your day, thorn branches and curses did the job. You curse them back as your shovel clangs on hidden rock. Every obstacle slows you. Every minute raises the risk of discovery. And oh, the risk. If caught, you face more than fines. Desecrating a grave is sacrilege. The mob would beat you bloody before the law ever tried you. Some might hang you on the spot. Worse still, superstition follows you. Children whisper that grave robbers are haunted by the dead they steal. Some say the souls trail after you, pale and whispering, waiting to drag you down. You laugh with your companions at the tavern, but alone, lantern flickering, you sometimes feel eyes on your back. Payment is good, better than most work. One fresh corpse can buy a month's food, maybe two. Scholars slip you coins with trembling hands, never looking too closely. Some even ask for specific bodies. Get me a youth, if possible, or a woman of middle years. You don't ask why, you just dig. But every coin feels heavier than silver. It clinks like bones in your purse. Your reputation suffers whether people know the truth or not. You stink of earth, of damp wood, of something sour that clings no matter how hard you wash. Neighbours avoid you. Children cross themselves. You sit alone in church, never daring to meet the priest's eyes. And yet, when a physician needs another lesson, when a nobleman's surgeon needs practice, when knowledge demands flesh, they send for you. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could grin and say, I provide higher education. Not untrue, though your students never live to see graduation. The work doesn't end with digging. Transporting the body is half the task. You bundle it in cloth, sling it over your shoulder, or haul it on a cart beneath straw. Each bump in the road feels like a shout. You imagine the corpse groaning, the head rolling, the hand slipping out to point at you accusingly. You quicken your step, sweat stinging your eyes. Historians still debate what resurrectionists thought of themselves. Were they cynics, laughing at superstition, or did they feel guilt, haunted by stolen peace? No record survived from your own pen. You never write, you never confess. You only keep digging, because the choice is simple, starve or rob graves. Sometimes, though, you feel a twisted pride. When you see a scholar carefully peel back skin, when you hear him lecture about veins and muscles, you know the world learned something because of your night's work. Maybe in 100 years, people will live longer, heal faster, because of bodies you unearthed. That thought doesn't cleanse your conscience, but it softens the edges. The night ends as dawn glimmers. You sling the body across your back, shuffle through alleys to a waiting cellar. Coins clink, doors shut. The corpse disappears into shadows where knives and chalk wait. You walk home lighter of burden, heavier of soul. You are the resurrectionist, the thief of silence, the shadow of science, the hand that steals rest to purchase knowledge. Feared, hated, hunted, yet always necessary in the secret hunger for progress. And until luck fails, until the gallows find you, you will keep digging. The lantern gutter of the graveyard gives way to a different light, the thin grey of dawn, because your next task begins before the sun gathers courage. You stand by a river bend where reeds bow in the breeze, and the air does not smell like reeds, it smells like the backside of the world. You're ankle deep in a tannery yard, pits of pale lime, vats the colour of tea, racks of stretched skins creaking in the wind. You are the tanner's apprentice, and your work perfumes the town so thoroughly that laws politely push you to the edge of it. You roll your shoulders, breathe as shallowly as manners allow, and get on with it. A cart rattles in with fresh hides from the shambles. They're still warm in places, slick and heavy, their edges quivering like tired sails. You drag one to the fleshing beam, a smooth waist-high log, and brace it with your belly. With a half-moon knife you push fat and clingy meat away in long greasy curls. It is a slow rain of offal. Your arms burn, your fingers numb, and you learn to keep the blade angled so it bites only what you tell it to. A slip here is not a nick. It's a ruined hide and a day's wage in shreds. Once the worst is peeled, you and the other apprentices heave the hides into a lime pit. The liquid is cold, milky, and mean. Lime loosens the hair and swells the skin. It also nibbles at yours. You stir with poles, you haul with hooks, you pray you don't tumble in. After days of steeping, you haul them out to a dehairing frame. With blunt scrapers you push fur and epidermis away in sheets. The hair slides off in ropes that you toss into a heap that looks disturbingly like a sleeping beast. Then you scud, scraping again, this time finer, until the grain shows clean and pale. You tell yourself it's like preparing a canvas. It helps not at all. Now comes the part you try not to explain at dinner. The bait. To soften the swollen fibre after lime, you feed the hide with enzymes. How? By soaking it in something living things have already digested. Pigeon droppings, dog dung, aged urine. You stir the bait vat with a stick and a very distant look in your eyes. The first time your stomach turned hard enough to bend nails. Now you fold the smell into your breathing, the way you once folded the marsh stink as a leech collector, or the ammonia reek back when you tramped wool as a fuller. Yes, life is a circle. Only the aroma changes. Historians still argue whether dung baiting was universal in the Middle Ages, or whether some towns preferred bran or stale urine alone. The recipes vary by guild, by river, by who wrote down the method without fainting. You rinse in the river, quickly, before the steward notices the extra bucket's gone, and then the real magic begins, tanning. Oak bark is king here, stripped and ground, its tannins leaching into the hides until flesh becomes leather. You stack skins in pits like pastry, hide then bark liquor, hide then liquor, and weight them under beams. Weeks pass for thin skins, months for thick, and for sole leather the calendar itself yawns. You can tell by the colour when the brew is right. Pale as weak tea for a gentle start, then darker infusions as the collagen tightens and grows stubborn. A mainstream fact you learn early and never forget. Medieval Europe's leather economy stood on oak. Bark legally measured, stored, taxed, so fiercely that some woods were managed just to feed tanneries as much as hearths. Waiting is part of the trade, and waiting is work. You turn the hides, you test the bite, you dodge the master's boot when he barks that apprentices should be everywhere at once. You oil the pieces pulled from the pits, neat's foot or fish oil rubbed in with a cloth until the surface darkens like wet stone. You stretch them on frames to dry, you curry them with slickers to smooth, you burnish edges with a bone until they glow. At the end of a long day, the yard sounds like a slow orchestra. Scrape, creak, slap, drip. A lullaby for anyone who enjoys nightmares. There is danger in every corner. Lime burns your skin to red paper. If it splashes in your eye, the world blurs for hours. Hooks slip, frames snap, vats swallow a careless foot. And then there is the invisible risk the old men never name but always scan for, the black sore that swells around a tiny cut after handling hides, the malignant pustule later generations will call anthrax. You do not know the word, but you know the way a hand can fever and a man can falter. You wrap rags tight, you whisper a prayer, you carry on. Your place in town is complicated. People need you every time they walk. Shoes, belts, harness, scabbards. bottles of leather for wine, even the bellows that feed the smith's fire. But they wrinkle their noses when you pass. Stigma treats you like smoke. It clings. Many cities forbid tanneries within the walls or downwind of noble gardens. Edicts push you to the riverside beyond the gate, where the water runs brown after a day's rinsing, and the geese have learned to complain in a special register. Historians still argue whether tanners enjoyed guild privileges equal to other crafts, or were boxed into marginal quarters with fewer rights. The charters are proud, the fines are frequent, and the truth smells like the yard. A quirky tidbit floats in with the flies. In some places, children were paid a pittance to collect pure, dog dung deemed best for the bait, carrying it in buckles and pails as if it were treasure. Elsewhere, pigeon keepers rented droppings by the sack, because lofts meant steady supply. There are men who will haggle over the freshness of such things with more poetry than minstrels reserve for spring. You learn to keep a straight face while buying the fowl, which is excellent practice for later life. Joke 1. Quiet as a smile between heartbeats. When someone asks your trade, you say, "I'm in fragrance," and then, after a beat, "industrial strength." Joke 2. Shared only with fellow apprentices. We're in leisure. The more you leather, the more they leisure. It earns exactly the groan it deserves. Joke 3, muttered while you rub oil into a stubborn soul. If anyone wants my skincare routine, it's ash, lime, and tears. It works better than any salve you can afford. Coins come slow, in blotted handfuls that smell faintly of bark because your fingers never stop carrying it. You eat at the yard, you sleep with the smell, and even on feast days you suspect the church incense smoulders just a little hotter when you walk in. Yet pride hides in the work's grain. When you see a saddler cut your side clean, when a cordwainer weighs your soul and nods, when the harness on a plough horse gleams like chestnut, your ribs lift. You made something that lasts. Not all of it is romance. A wet spring floods the bark store. A dry summer thins the river and slows the rinse. In winter your hands crack until they bloom red at the knuckles. In summer, flies crown you like a petty king. The master trusts you with the pits, but not the ledger. And promotion is a ladder missing rungs. Some apprentices age into couriers, finishing masters who give leather its final sleek. Others drift to cobbling or pack up for the next town where the river is stronger and the guild less prickly. Historians still argue whether mobility like that was freedom or exile in another name. Your back votes for exile, your hope calls it freedom. Evening leans in at last. The pits darken to ink. The last frames click in the cooler air, and the river's skin goes mirror flat. You hang your scraper, wipe your hands, and discover the day's smell has cupped itself behind your ears, where water never quite reaches. You grin anyway. Tomorrow will be more of the same, flesh, lime, hair, bark, oil, and the day after, and after that. But the town will walk on your work, and horses will pull on your straps, and the world will go forward with you under it like a quiet foundation. You are the tanner's apprentice, the one who turns slaughter's leavings into the city's skin, who learns patience from pits and toughness from lime, who carries the stink so others may carry everything else. You shoulder your bundle, follow the river path home, and let the crickets file the edges off the day until your breath evens and your hands forget their ache. You trade the tannery's bark-stained pits for the crisp bite of morning in the market, where stalls bloom like patchwork gardens, and every voice competes with bells and chickens. Your fingers are still brown with oak and oil, but today they smell of green things, crushed yarrow, sticky resin, damp roots ribboned with soil. You lay out your wares on a rough-woven cloth. Bundles of thyme and plantain, spikes of lavender, coils of dried willow bark, a fistful of rosemary sprigs like tiny pine brooms, and breathe through the herbal fog you've brought to drown the city's other smells. You are the herb peddler, half healer, half suspect, entirely busy. Your patter starts before your stool finds the cobbles. For coughs, you say, tapping horehound tied with twine. For sleep, and your hand lights on valerian, the root sweetly rancid like a drowsy cat. For aching heads, and willow bark rasps beneath your knife as you shave off curls that look like pale cinnamon. A woman in a wool coif leans close, eyes rimmed red from a night of coughing children. You measure a pinch into her palm and a mercy into your price. Coins tinkle, hope to. The market has long memory. You've traded here since winter, learning who argues, who pays, who steals, who buys anything if you whisper, "Blessed by Saint so-and-so." Some mornings the apothecary's boy lurks 2 stalls away, scowling on his master's behalf. Guild men like him prefer customers climb their polished thresholds, not by healing from a cloth spread on stone. You nod politely and ignore him. Your customers come because they recognize your face, your smell, your willingness to listen while they list aches from ankle to sole. A girl with freckles holds out a scraped knee. You crush plantain leaves between thumb and palm until they go slick and dark, then press the mash to the skin. The green bleeds into her cut and the sting lifts like a twig in water. "Change the dressing when it dries," you murmur. She nods, brave now, and asks if the leaves know how to knit. "They do," you say, "just tiny stitches." She grins, and you tuck a spare sprig into her pocket like a ribbon. A tooth-gnashing miller, yes, the very same you saw in the tooth-drawer's stool, sidles up with a swollen jaw. You pass him a clove-studded scrap of linen to bite on. A poor man's spice, but powerful. Then dab his gum with sage steeped in spirits. "This won't pull the tooth," you warn, "but it'll quiet the drum until you dare the pliers again." He groans in gratitude. You make a mental note to bring more sage tomorrow. Some trades are eternal. Remember when you were the medieval dentist? Your ears do. You keep a little corner for the marsh, a nod to your leech collecting days, a jar of dried alum for stopping nosebleeds, a twist of tansy because rat catchers swear the smell troubles vermin, a few sprigs of yarrow you used to stuff in your leggings to keep swamp leeches from climbing too high. Herbs travel with you from job to job, like old friends who tolerate every new address. The mainstream truth of your trade is a quiet one. Monasteries have tended physic gardens for centuries, copying plant lore into thick books while brothers in brown weed beds of fennel and rue. From Dioscorides to Hildegard, recipes walk across parchment, and some of those recipes walk into your basket. You're not a witch, you tell yourself when the gossip nips your heels. You're a walking enleaf of a library, made of leaves that smell better than calf skin. Then again, the line between lore and spell blurs easily. A woman with worry in her mouth and hands like empty baskets leans close, voice low. She wants something for women's monthly tempests, and you hear in that phrase more tides than the moon admits. You offer pennyroyal with a warning and chamomile without one, a bundle for cramps and another for nerves. You do not speak the word the priest hates, and she does not either. The bundle is heavier with meaning than with leaves. A lanky boy drifts up, palm nicked from a cobbler's awl. You hand him comfrey, knitbone, as even the roughest men call it, and show him how to brew a soft poultice. Not on broken skin, you add. Comfrey stitches so quickly it can trap trouble beneath. He nods solemnly, as if you've given him a night's secret and not a plant with sweet purple bells. He leaves whistling, and the tune makes the rosemary shiver. Your stall is also theatre. Little rhymes help the nervous remember. Rosemary for recall, sage for the old, thyme for courage, willow for cold. You tuck tiny paper flags into bundles like recipes. Boil, steep, breathe. Children love your jars as much as your jokes. You lift a jar of marigold petals to the light. The colour is so bright it hums. Sunlight, saved, you whisper. A boy's eyes go round as pennies, quirky tidbit to savour between sails. Some swear the best way to harvest mandrake is to tie its root to a dog, plug your ears, and let the creature pull, lest the plant's screams strike you dead. You don't sell mandrake, too dear, too risky, too noisy, but you do sell carrots shaped like tiny people, and nobody has fainted yet. Suspicion finds you anyway. A beadle pauses, sniffs, frowns. The apothecary's boy whispers in his ear. You meet their gaze and arrange your bunches until they look like bouquets brought to a saint. Healing, you say lightly, not hexing. Historians still argue whether accusations against herb women were driven by guild protection and parish politics, or by genuine fear of malefic sorcery. But you know how fast a whisper turns into a stake once a cow dies oddly, or a baby's fever lingers. You keep your tone mild, your prices fair, your blessings short. Let the apothecary brew thunder in glass. You will brew tenderness in cups. Here's joke 1, folded softly like a sprig in a sleeve. When someone asks your trade, you say, I sell salads with side quests. The baker snorts so hard flour floats. Joke 2, for the carpenter rubbing a sore wrist. These are influencer roots. Very deep content. He groans and buys willow anyway. Joke 3, easy as breathing. If you don't like the taste, pinch your nose. Every potion becomes a perfume. The market laughs and relaxes. Laughter is a kind of medicine, and you dispense it freely. Not every remedy is plant. You keep beeswax for salves, goose grease for rubbed chests, vinegar for washings, honey for throats and wounds alike, sweet and sharp, a pair of wings you pour into any bottle. A mainstream fact tucked under your tongue. Honey's keeping powers are legendary. More than one physician swears by honey dressings while sneering at your leaf bundles, then asks quietly if you have more. A widow arrives with eyes like storm glass. Sleep has left her doorway and refuses to come home. You bundle chamomile, lavender, a whisper of hops, a nod to alewives and their bitter art. Boil, breathe, sip, you say. And if a fan hums in your window, you wink at an old jest from nights long after this century. All the better. She almost smiles. You count that as victory. The day thins. Shade creeps from the church's spine, the bell counts the hour, and your cloth shows more crumbs than bundles. You wrap stems in damp rag, tie your coin cord twice, and rub crushed rosemary between your palms to smoke away whatever the market hung on you. Your feet know this dance. Collect, crush, steep, strain, soothe, then rise again tomorrow to do it all once more. You are the herb peddler, the pocket garden of the poor, the soft knock at sickness before it kicks the door, the green memory of fields braided into city life. You shoulder your basket and go, leaving the square sweeter than you found it, and the evening air follows you like a blessing you didn't have to say out loud. The market fades into shadow, and the voices of hawkers die down, leaving only the scrape of shutters closing and the murmur of taverns lighting their hearths. When night descends, another profession takes its turn. You pull your cloak tighter, adjust the halberd at your side, and listen to the stillness. Tonight, you are the watchman, guardian of the sleeping town, the one who patrols the streets while others dream. The first toll of the bell rings from the church tower. You step into the cobbled lane, lantern swinging from your hand. Your job is rhythm itself, to pace the streets, to cry the hours, to let all know time still marches. Past 9 o'clock and all's well. Your voice echoes down the alleys, bouncing against stone and timber. A dog barks, then silence swallows it. You walk on, boots crunching in the frost. It's not glamour. By day, merchants and guildmasters strut with coin and pride. By night, you trudge with weariness. Your cloak is thin, the lamp smokes, the halberd feels heavier with each hour, and yet this is your stage. You're the town's night eyes, the voice of its heartbeat, the barrier, frail though it may be, between order and chaos. The duties go beyond announcing hours. You watch for thieves slipping through shadows, for drunkards weaving out of taverns, for fires sparking in careless hearths. In a world where a single candle could consume an entire row of houses, your eyes are as valuable as any priest's prayers. You peer into yards, sniff for smoke, rap on doors if you smell danger. Historians still argue whether watchmen were respected officials or simply conscripts. In some towns, householders took turns by law. 1 night in 20, each man served. In others, councils hired poor labourers to patrol for wages, low but steady. Some records hint of criminals spared harsher punishments if they agreed to serve in the watch. So perhaps you're an honest man with thin pockets, or perhaps you're a thief pressed into guarding against your own kind. You pace again. Past 10 o'clock and all's well. You draw out the last note, letting it echo long. Some curse you for waking their children, but others rest easier knowing your voice circles the night. It is not just the hour you announce, it is reassurance, like a lullaby from the town itself, a quirky tidbit. In some places, watchmen carried horns instead of bells, blasting rude notes at each hour. Others had clappers, sticks with hinged slats that rattled like bones when shaken. And in more colourful towns, you might even chant rhymes, little songs about the weather or the stars. You imagine yourself more minstrel than guard, though your audience rarely applauds. The dangers are real. Shadows hide more than stray cats. Cut purses crouch, eyes glinting, waiting for coin purses to jingle. Brawlers spill from taverns, fists flying, bottles breaking. Sometimes you wade in, halberd raised, hoping your shout scatters them before blades come out. Other nights, you stand back, knowing better than to take steel for a stranger's quarrel. And always there is the fire, your true enemy. One lick of flame, one roof beam igniting, and the town could vanish before dawn. Your voice, loud and clear, must be the alarm. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could shrug and say, "I walk in circles and tell people to sleep." Not inaccurate, though it misses the bit about occasionally saving the town from burning to ash. Your reputation is mixed. Some call you lazy, claiming you sleep in doorways and pocket wages. Others mock your cries, mimicking your all's well, until taverns roar with laughter. Yet when a thief is caught or a fire doused, praise flows easily, though rarely to your face. You live in that twilight space of being mocked, relied upon, and soon forgotten. Historians still debate whether the medieval watch truly kept order or simply gave an illusion of safety. Records of thefts and riots suggest crime flourished anyway. But the sound of the watchman's cry, the sight of his lantern bobbing down a lane, gave comfort. And sometimes comfort is half the battle. Midnight comes, your cry slower now. 12 o'clock and all's well. You rub your eyes, sip weak ale from a flask and carry on. The hours creep. 1, 2, 3. Your voice cracks with cold. Your feet ache from cobbles. Your breath steams. Dawn is still far, yet you walk. Finally the eastern sky pales. Roosters crow, the baker stirs fires, you lean your halberd against the guardhouse wall, lantern sputtering out. You stretch sore shoulders, wipe frost from your beard, your shift ends. The town wakes, none the wiser for the dangers that might have stirred. That is your role, to keep dangers small, invisible, forgotten. You are the watchman, the voice of the hours, the sentinel in shadows, the one mocked at taverns but remembered in crises. You guard not just houses but peace of mind, walking through night so others may rest in sleep that feels safe. The cry of the watchman fades with dawn. The bell tower sighs its morning hymn, and the streets stir again with life. Market shutters rattle open, smoke curls from hearths, and people call out for the most basic need of all, not spices, not silks, not sermons, but water. Buckets clatter, barrels slosh, and that is when you step forward. Tonight, your work is neither guarding nor scouring. Tonight you stoop, heave and stagger under the oldest burden in the world. You are the water carrier. Your day begins at the well, the spring, or the river bank, depending on what your town provides. In truth, most wells within city walls are foul, half poisoned by cesspits dug too close, or by runoff seeping from filthy streets. The river itself may shimmer with waste and dye from tanneries upstream, but still it is your duty to fill barrels, to haul jars, to make the undrinkable at least usable. People depend on you to deliver what they cannot, or will not, fetch for themselves. The tools are simple. 2 yokes across your shoulders, each hung with iron hoops, ropes and buckets, or sometimes a handcart creaking under a sloshing barrel. Either way, it's weight, crushing weight. A pair of full buckets might drag 40 or 50 pounds against your spine, digging grooves into your shoulders. You learn to sway with the load, to step carefully so water doesn't slop away with every jolt. Your boots are always wet, your back always bent, your palms always blistered. You trudge from house to house. A cook throws open a shutter. Here, water for bread. You tip a bucket into her cask, wipe your brow, take her coin. A weaver calls from his doorway. For the loom, quick now. You drop another load. A noble servant appears, purse light, voice sharp. The lady requires clear water for washing. You know the irony. You fetched it from the same river that smells of dye and dung. But you nod, bow, and hand it over. Historians still argue whether medieval water carriers were licensed trades or informal labour. In larger cities, some were recognised, regulated, taxed. In smaller towns, anyone desperate enough could grab a yoke and start hauling. The pay was meagre, but steady. Everyone needs water. Everyone. A quirky tidbit. In Paris, water carriers sometimes sang as they walked, bawdy rhymes that mocked the very people they served. Drink deep and may your belly swell if your coin is light, may your throat be dry as hell. Customers laughed, sometimes cursed, but they kept buying. After all, you can mock a baker, but you'll still buy his bread. The danger in your work is hidden, but constant. Wells collapse, ropes snap, carts tip. Once, you saw a fellow carrier stumble, barrel rolling over him, bones cracked like firewood. More insidious still, the water itself. Sometimes you deliver sickness without knowing it. Dysentery, fevers, plagues, they travel in the very buckets you bear. Families blame you when children fall ill. They spit, shout, throw your coin back. You want to protest, but your tongue falters. You only carried what they demanded. The river's poison is not yours to cleanse. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could grin and say, I make people pay for what falls free from the sky. Not bad. Though no one laughs when drought comes and rain refuses to fall, your reputation is strange. You're seen as necessary but hardly noble. Nobles prefer not to imagine their washing water came from your yoke. Merchants mutter about your prices, though they are pennies. Neighbours sneer when they see your shoulders stooped, your clothes damp, your boots caked with mud. Yet when fire breaks out, who do they run to? You with your buckets, you with your barrels. In that moment you're not mocked, but begged. Historians still debate whether water carriers were eventually replaced by aqueducts or pipes. In truth, those luxuries served only the wealthiest. For most, for centuries, it was still men and women with yokes, trudging from well to hearth, one bucket at a time. The rhythm of your day is monotonous but relentless. Fill, haul, pour, collect coin, repeat. Your muscles knot like ropes, your spine bends, yet you know your town runs on your sweat. No bread is baked, no dye boiled, no throat soothed without you. Evening comes. You set down the yoke, shoulders screaming, shirt damp with sloshed water. You count your coins by candlelight, enough for bread, maybe cheese, never more. You rub your arms, feel bruises bloom. You lean back, eyes closing, hearing the faint rush of the river in your dreams. You'll rise again tomorrow, walk the same path, shoulder the same load. You are the water carrier, the lifeline of the town, the bent-backed servant of thirst, the one who delivers both life and, sometimes, death in buckets. Your name will not be remembered, but your work touches every lip, every hand, every hearth. And until pipes are built, until fountains flow freely, you will trudge with yoke and rope, the river sloshing against your bones. The splash of water and the ache of the yoke fade into memory. The city walls fall behind you, and before your eyes spread open fields, rolling hills, and the distant bleat of sheep. No bustling markets here, no stink of tannery pits or cries of town criers. Just grass, sky, and the endless sound of bells tied around woolly necks. You are the shepherd's boy, a job as old as flocks themselves, and one that is both peaceful and perilous in ways no townsman understands. Your morning begins before the sun fully warms the dew. You rise from a straw pallet in a shepherd's hut, or sometimes straight from the ground where you fell asleep the night before, wrapped in a coarse cloak. A crook leans against the doorway, simple wood bent at the end, and a pouch hangs at your side with bread hardened to stone, cheese that sweats, and maybe a sliver of onion. That is your banquet. You whistle, and the sheep stir, hooves clicking on stones, wool glowing pale in the early light. Your task sounds simple. Keep the flock alive. In practice, it is a constant dance. You guide them to pasture, watching that they do not stray too far. You whistle and call, sometimes throw stones or loose the dogs to round up stragglers. You know the taste of boredom, hours staring at grazing mouths, listening to wind and bees. But you also know how quickly boredom can snap into terror. The first danger is wolves. Their howls roll across hills at dusk, and your blood runs colder than the night air. You clutch your crook tighter, whispering to the dogs to stay sharp. If you're lucky, the wolves keep their distance, content with fear. If not, you find yourself shouting, waving torches, even hurling rocks at eyes that gleam like coals in the dark. Some boys never return from those nights, their flocks scattered, their names remembered only in whispers. Historians still argue whether wolves were truly as constant a threat in every region as folklore insists. Some chronicles brim with stories of wolf attacks, others barely mention them. Perhaps memory amplifies the danger, Or perhaps shepherds like you exaggerated to justify your courage. But as you sit in the grass, listening to distant howls, you do not doubt their teeth. The second danger is thieves. Men are sometimes worse than wolves. Bandits creep across fields, silent as shadows, slitting throats of lambs and vanishing with carcasses, or they drive the whole flock away, leaving you alone and beaten. You watch the horizon, not just for predators on four legs, but for those on two. The third danger is nature itself. Sheep are fragile. Too much rain, and they sicken. Too little, and they starve. A broken leg on a rocky slope, a lamb separated from its mother, a ewe stuck in a thorn bush. Every problem is yours to solve. You've pulled lambs from cold streams with numb arms, wrapped shivering creatures in your own cloak, and prayed that your master will not notice the one that did not survive. Your reputation is peculiar. Shepherds are seen as simple, rustic, half wild. Townsfolk mock you for your smell, your ragged clothes, your hair matted with wind, and yet they rely on the wool you guard. The cloth on their backs, the blankets on their beds, the very tapestries hanging in their halls, all begin with your flock. They laugh at you, then drape themselves in the fruits of your labour, a quirky tidbit. In many medieval songs and tales, shepherds' boys were painted as tricksters, jokesters, or even secret poets. You whistle long rhymes into the wind, hum tunes that later wander into courtly verse. Some say even kings once played shepherd in disguise, wandering fields for love. You chuckle at that thought. No king you know could stomach a single night in the mud. The monotony of the day is broken by your dog. Faithful, clever, sometimes more skilled than you. With a bark and a dash, it drives stragglers back to the flock. You whistle commands, it responds without fail. The two of you are partners, guardians of the woolen tide. Without the dog, you'd be helpless. With it, you are a small army. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could grin and say, "I watch wool grow." Not far from the truth, though less impressive than it sounds. Historians still debate whether shepherd boys were paid at all or merely given food and lodging. Some served as bound labourers, others as sons helping fathers, others as hired hands scraping by on pennies. Whatever the arrangement, the work was endless, the pay small, the responsibility massive. As evening falls, you guide the flock back toward pens or stone-walled folds. The sheep shuffle close, wool brushing against your legs, their warmth strangely comforting. You count them, again and again, because one missing could cost you dearly. At last, the gate closes, the flock safe. You collapse on your cloak, nibbling stale bread, staring at stars that burn brighter than any torch. Your eyes close, but even in dreams you hear bleating, barking, howling. Tomorrow will be the same. Guard, guide, endure. And yet, part of you finds peace here. The rhythm of hooves, the whisper of grass, the wide sky. This is a life apart from cities and cesspits, forgotten by many, but steady. You are the shepherd's boy, the quiet guardian of flocks, mocked as simple but carrying a burden older than kings. You walk where wool is born, where fields meet sky, where danger prowls unseen, and until dawn breaks again, you will keep watch, crook in hand, eyes sharp, ears tuned to the song of the flock. The wide hills and the bleating of sheep dissolve behind you, and once again you smell something sharper, sourer, a stench you thought you'd left behind after your days as a gong farmer. But tonight the labour is not yours alone. It clings to your household, your clothes, even your family. For tonight you are not the man wading cesspits with shovel and rope. You are the gong farmer's wife, and your work begins when his ends. He returns at dawn, boots caked, shoulders bowed, carrying not coin but the stink of a city's bowels. He drops his tunic by the door, stiff with filth, and who must tend to it? You. Buckets of lye water wait in the yard. You scrub cloth so foul that neighbours cross themselves as they pass your fence. Ash, sand, even urine are your tools for scouring. Hands raw, nails black, lungs filled with fumes. You learn to press your lips together to keep from gagging, to breathe shallowly through your nose, to sing softly so your children think the work less grim than it is. But the stink does not stop with laundry. It fills the cottage. Every surface is tainted, stools, bedding. Even the bread you bake tastes faintly of the pits. The neighbours whisper, and not quietly. They call your husband cursed, your children unclean. They pinch their noses when you pass in the market. Your daughter's betrothal chances sink with every wrinkle of a noble's wife's nose. The stink is not just physical, it is social, clinging tighter than wool. Historians still argue whether the families of gong farmers were ostracised as harshly as the men themselves. Some guild records suggest entire households were marked by stigma, forbidden to live inside town walls. Others imply that wives sometimes broke free, taking other work to support the family while men toiled at night. But the silence in most chronicles speaks louder than words. No one thought wives worth recording. You were invisible, yet you bore the burden every bit as much as the man who dug. Daylight is your battle. You wash clothes until your skin cracks. You scrub your children, scolding when they sneak back from play reeking of muck. You boil herbs, rosemary, sage, lavender if you can afford it, hoping to sweeten the air. You pound rushes to scatter on the floor, soaking up filth, masking odours. Still, the stink returns. It always does. And yet, your evenings bring another burden. The men return from pits with coins, small, greasy, never enough, and with exhaustion. You cook what little you have. You mend torn boots. You rub ointments into sores. You listen to their stories, ladders breaking, ropes snapping, men nearly drowned in filth. You hold your husband's hand when he trembles, though your own stomach churns. The children watch. You must smile, pretend strength, for their sake. A quirky tidbit. Some records mention gong farmers' wives selling the manure their husbands hauled, not only as waste but as fertilizer. Imagine that. Trading filth for coin, hands already blistered from washing, voice already hoarse from defending your children. You become merchant of muck, broker of fields, and still people mock you for the stench. The dangers to you are hidden but real. Constant exposure to soiled garments spreads sickness. You suffer fevers, coughs, stomach pains. Women whisper about miscarriages more common in households like yours, though no priest records them. Cuts on your hands fester from endless scrubbing in foul water. Your body breaks down sooner than most, but no ballad will sing of your sacrifice. Here's your nightly joke, though it tastes bitter on your tongue. If someone asked what you did, you could say, "I keep the stink fashionable." No one laughs, but sometimes humour is the only shield you have. The stigma reaches further. Children in the street call your son dung spawn. Merchants refuse to sell you cloth without higher coin. Even priests wrinkle their noses at confession, offering you shorter prayers as if your sins smell worse than others. And yet, when the harvest is poor and the fields need manure, farmers seek your door, begging for what your husband hauls. Hypocrisy hangs heavier than the stink. Historians still debate whether such families found solace in tight-knit communities, living together in dung lanes on the edge of towns. Some chronicles describe whole streets of gong farmers' kin, bonded by their exile. Others suggest wives endured isolation, clinging to scraps of dignity wherever they could. You suspect both are true. Some nights, neighbours share bread. Other nights they spit as you pass. And yet, you endure. Because beneath the filth and scorn lies survival. Your husband's work feeds your children. Your hands, blistered and raw, keep them clothed. You bear what others cannot even imagine, because you must. As night falls, you scrub one last tunic, rinse one last bucket, scatter herbs across the cottage floor. You tuck your children into straw beds, kiss their foreheads, breathe in their hair, sweet, clean, untouched for now. You sit by the door, listening to your husband snore, your hands folded in your lap. The stink still clings, but you no longer notice. Tomorrow will bring more laundry, more whispers, more buckets. But tomorrow you will rise again, because there is no one else to do it. You are the gong farmer's wife, the unseen partner of filth, the cleaner of cleaners, the silent sufferer who carries shame without thanks. The pits may belong to men, but the stink belongs to you too. And though no record speaks your name, every clean chamber pot in the castle, every field fertilized with dung, every house sweetened after filth, owes something to your hands. The stink of dung and the weary scrubbing of laundry recede into darkness, and now the new day greets you with something far less filthy but no less thankless. Noise. You wake before dawn, grab your wooden pipe, and prepare to rouse the entire town whether they want it or not. For tonight your odd trade is music without applause. You are the town piper. Your work begins when most people are still in dreamland. The air is cold, the sky bruised with the first light of morning. You pace through the streets with pipe at your lips, blowing shrill notes that scatter crows from rooftops and peel stubborn sleepers from their beds. The tune is an art, not the courtly dances nobles pay for. It is sharp, repetitive, designed to pierce through shutters and ears alike. You play so butchers can rise to sharpen knives, bakers can light ovens, apprentices can stumble to workshops. Your pipe is the alarm clock of the medieval world. The reaction is mixed, to say the least. Some thank you, half awake, for rousing them to work on time, but most groan, curse, or throw open shutters to shout, "Pipe down!" Children tug blankets tighter, tavern drunks bury heads in straw, and more than once you've dodged a shoe or two hurled from windows. Still, your duty is not popularity, it's punctuality. Historians still argue whether piper posts were common or just local quirks. Some towns hired them officially, listing their wages in civic rolls. Others left the job to wandering musicians who struck bargains with guilds or councils. Either way, the idea of paid wake-up music crops up enough to suggest it was more than myth. Your repertoire is limited but effective. You blast quick trills for morning, long drones for curfews at night, sometimes a jaunty tune to signal festivals or market days. A quirky tidbit. In some towns, pipers doubled as watchmen, using tunes instead of cries to mark hours. Imagine the difference between all's well and a squeaky scale announcing midnight. One comforts, the other irritates, but both mean someone is awake. You carry your pipe through alleys, past taverns still glowing. Inside, drunkards groan. One throws a mug at the wall in protest. You grin, pipe louder. For every complaint there is a silent thanks. Bakers pulling loaves from ovens, smiths hammering sparks, mothers stirring pots. You are the town's rooster, only less feathery and more resented. The dangers are minor compared to cesspits or graveyards, but they exist. Not everyone enjoys being roused by song. Angry apprentices have chased you with broom handles. A noble once ordered his guard to silence your piping permanently. You fled that night and didn't play near his quarter for weeks. And of course, there's always the risk of your pipe cracking in frost or swelling in damp, leaving you mute and unpaid. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could smirk and say, "I'm a professional annoyance." That at least earns honest laughter. Your pay is modest, often supplemented with tips from guilds who value timely workers. Bakers especially slip you coins. They know a single miss at dawn can cost a day's bread. Sometimes you're invited to play at feasts or fairs, where your tunes are more welcome. But most days you're paid not to be loved but to be endured. Historians still debate whether pipers leaned more towards civic duty or private hire. In some cities they were salaried servants of the council. In others, they scraped coin directly from households, a medieval subscription fee. Refuse to pay, and perhaps you accidentally oversleep next market day. Your pipe in this sense wields more subtle power than it seems. The stigma is peculiar. Children mimic your squeaks. Neighbours mutter that you sound like a goose strangled. Yet when plague strikes, or soldiers march, or fires break out, towns call for you to pipe warnings. Your shrill voice becomes a signal, carrying farther than shouts. In those moments your pipe is not a nuisance, it is salvation. Evenings bring a softer roll. You walk again at dusk, piping curfew. Notes drift through streets as candles gutter and shutters close. Some curse you for ending their fun, but others bless you for keeping order. You lay your pipe aside at last, sit by your small hearth, and rub your lips sore from hours of playing. Tomorrow will bring another round of squeaks, groans, curses and coins. You are the town piper, the shrill herald of dawn, the musical clock of the square, the player no one applauds but everyone relies on. Your notes weave through markets, workshops and dreams, reminding the town that time waits for no one. And until clocks tick in towers and alarms ring from bells alone, your pipe will sound, sharp and relentless, the melody of obligation. The squeal of the town piper's notes fades, swallowed by distance and daylight, but now you follow a quieter path, one most people avoid at all costs. Beyond the town's edge stands a low building of timber and stone, its windows shuttered, its door marked with a painted cross. Here, laughter never rings. Here, footsteps echo in whispers. Tonight you walk into the leper hospital, and your task is not to sing, nor to scrub, nor to cry the hours. Tonight, you are the leper hospital attendant. The smell greets you first. It is not the sharp stench of dung or tannery pits, but something subtler, heavier, the sour, sweet rot of illness. You tie a cloth across your nose, though it hardly helps. Inside, the air is thick with smoke from juniper and rosemary fires, meant to purify what no smoke can cleanse. Beds line the walls, each holding a patient wrapped in coarse wool, their hands and feet bandaged, their faces half hidden. Some stare blankly at the rafters, some mumble prayers, others cry softly into the dark. Your duty is everything no one else dares to do. You fetch water for washing. You scrub sores with vinegar, though the patients wince and flinch. You wrap their limbs in fresh cloth, hoping to slow the spread of disease. You empty bowls of foul sputum. You carry trays of weak broth. You chase flies from wounds. Every task is done quickly but carefully, for fear that one touch, one slip, one cough might mark you too. Historians still argue whether medieval leprosy was truly the same disease modern science calls Hansen's disease. Some say it was a cluster of skin ailments, lumped together by frightened physicians. Others insist it was the same ancient scourge. Either way, the fear was absolute. To be branded a leper was to be exiled in life, buried in community though still breathing. A quirky tidbit. Many leper houses gave patients handbells or wooden clappers to carry, forcing them to announce their approach so others could step aside. As attendant, you live surrounded by those sounds, a constant clatter of shame and warning. Some nights, even in sleep, you hear the hollow knock of clappers in your dreams. Your hands blister from endless washing. Lion vinegar crack your skin, leaving cuts that sting when touched by infected cloth. You whisper prayers against contagion, trace crosses over your chest, promise yourself you will not bring the sickness home. And yet, when you scratch an itch or feel a tingling in your fingers, dread blooms. You stare at your skin in candlelight, searching for spots that might never fade. The pay is low, barely above that of a scullion. The church may give alms, the town a small stipend, but your work is driven less by coin than by duty or desperation. Perhaps you took this post because no other job would have you. Perhaps you served because your own kin was cast out and you stayed by their side. Whatever the reason, the burden is yours now. Here's your nightly joke, whispered only to yourself. If someone asked what you did, you could say, I work in hospitality, just not the kind you'd book a room for. Humour is thin armour, but armour nonetheless. Your reputation is tangled. Some townsfolk call you saintly, brave, devoted. Others call you cursed, doomed, foolish for lingering near contagion. They cross the street when you approach, as though invisible threads stretch from your skin to theirs. You live on the border between compassion and fear, between service and exile. Historians still debate whether attendants like you were volunteers from religious orders or conscripted from the poor. Some records praise monks and nuns who tended patients with gentle hands. Others hint that the lowest labourers were shoved into this work, whether willing or not. In truth, both stories hold weight. Some serve out of mercy, some out of need. Night deepens in the hospital. The fires burn low, shadows stretch across pale faces. You check bandages one last time, refill water jugs, scatter herbs to keep rats from crawling under cots. A patient coughs, racked and raw. You dab his lips with a cloth, murmur a psalm, and hope the words comfort him more than they comfort you. Then, at last, you step outside. The cool air tastes sharp, clean, almost unreal after hours in the fetid ward. You breathe deep, as though cleansing yourself. Yet you know the scent of sickness clings to your cloak, the risk clings to your skin, the memory clings to your mind. You are the leper hospital attendant, the quiet hand at the edge of the world, the one who bears disgust so others may forget it exists. You tend the shunned, wrap their sores, listen to their cries, and whisper prayers when no priest will come. You are half servant, half ghost, living in a limbo where health and exile meet. And until your hands tremble too much to tie bandages, you will keep serving, even if the world never thanks you. The hush of the leper house lingers in your bones as you step back into the daylight, and now the task before you seems almost cheerful, though no less strange. You're not scrubbing sores or chasing wolves tonight. Instead, you carry a ladle and a sharp tongue. Your duty is to drink for the good of the people. You are the ale taster. The taverns are busy, the streets humming with chatter. Brewers haul barrels out from sheds, froth spilling from wooden lids, and townsfolk gather with thirst in their eyes. But before mugs are poured and coins exchanged, there is you. You stand in the square with a long-handled cup, your job to sample what others will drink. Not for pleasure, though you sometimes enjoy it, but for safety, quality, and of course, fairness in trade. Your first stop is a small tavern near the smithy. The brewer rolls out a barrel, sweat gleaming on his brow, pride in his stride. You dip your ladle, scoop frothy amber, and take a long sip. It is warm, tangy, bubbling faintly. You roll it on your tongue, smack your lips, sniff deeply. Then you nod or frown. If it's strong enough, clean enough, taxed fairly, you allow it. If not, you announce your displeasure, and the brewer may pay a fine or dump the whole batch. Historians still argue how official this role was. In some towns, ale tasters were elected yearly by guilds, sworn in by council, their judgments written into record. In others, it was informal, little more than a trusted drinker chosen by neighbours. The truth likely varies from place to place, but one thing is certain. Medieval ale was not always safe. Grain spoiled, barrels soured, unscrupulous brewers watered their product. Without tasters, every sip was a gamble, a quirky tidbit. Some towns required tasters to walk barefoot over a single plank after drinking. If they could balance without stumbling, the ale was declared safe. Imagine that. Sobriety tests before sobriety even had a name. You grin at the thought, though you failed more than once to the amusement of children gathered nearby. Your reputation is double-edged. On one hand, you are respected because your word decides whether brewers profit or starve. On the other, you are mocked because people joke that you're just paid to drink. They call you lucky, but they do not see the stomach cramps that follow a bad batch, or the headaches from spoiled hops, or the cough when you swallow something brewed in dirty barrels. You've spent more nights hugging chamber pots than you care to admit. Still, there is pride in your work. You protect the people from sickness. You ensure no one pays good coin for ditch water. You keep brewers honest for fear of your tongue. A good ale is rich, foamy and filling, a meal as much as a drink. You've tipped your head back many times and declared, "A fine brew, fit for feast," and the cheer that follows warms you more than the drink itself. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked your trade, you could grin and say, "I drink on the job and get paid for it." It's true, though the hangovers are free. The dangers extend beyond spoiled grain. Brewers resent your judgments. A single scowl from you might ruin their month, and more than one has muttered curses under his breath, even threatened to season your next cup with something less than savoury. You keep a wary eye when you taste, never letting your cup out of sight, and when the ale is truly bad, you dump it yourself, ignoring the growls behind you. Historians still debate whether tasters were chosen for their honesty, their strong stomachs, or simply their thirst. Perhaps all three. Surviving roles list names but never reasons. You suspect it was a mixture of luck, trust, and the willingness to risk illness for coin. As evening falls, you make your rounds once more. Taverns fill with laughter, mugs clink, songs rise. You sit by the fire, sip one last cup, not to test but to relax. The day's coins jingle in your pouch, enough for bread and maybe a new cloak. You rub your temples, feeling the dull ache of too much ale, but you smile anyway. Because for all the mockery, all the hangovers, your job matters. You are the ale taster, the tongue of the town, the drinker who saves others from sickness, the quiet guardian of quality. You drink so others may trust their cups, you risk so others may cheer, and though your name may fade, your judgment lingers in every foamy mug. The cheer of taverns fades behind you, the warmth of ale replaced by the cluck and flap of wings. Dawn creeps over the town again, and with it comes hunger, not for bread or beer, but for meat. Kitchens roar with fire, nobles demand feasts, and inns promise travellers roasted birds with crisp skin and steaming flesh. But those platters do not appear by magic. Someone must do the work before cooks can preen. Tonight, that someone is you. Tonight, you are the chicken gutter. Your day begins before the sun, when the yard is already alive with sound. Hundreds of birds squawk, flap and scatter as you wade among them. Their feathers brush your boots, their beaks nip your hands. You reach down, seize one by the legs, flip it upside down. The world spins for the bird. For you, it is just another morning. You hold it steady, whisper a quick word, sometimes a prayer, sometimes a joke, and with a sharp twist or knife stroke, the squawking ends. You hang it by its feet, blood dripping into a trough, steam rising in the cold air, and then you reach for another. Hours blur into feathers and blood. You pluck while your hands cramp, yank quills until your nails split. Feathers float like snow, sticking to sweat, clinging to your face. Sometimes they drift into your mouth, and you spit curses. The smell is sharp, raw, metallic, mixed with the barnyard stink of droppings. You try not to notice anymore. Once plucked, the gutting begins. You slit the belly, fingers sliding inside, warm and slick. You scoop intestines into buckets, careful not to puncture them lest the stink worsen. Hearts, livers, gizzards, some saved, some tossed. The best parts go to pies, the scraps to dogs. You work quickly, mechanically, your hands moving before your mind. By midday you have gutted dozens, maybe hundreds, and the pile of carcasses beside you looks like a battlefield. Historians still argue how specialised this role was. Some say it belonged to butchers' apprentices, others to kitchen scullions. In big towns, records suggest whole teams of chicken gutters working for markets, supplying roasted birds by the cartload. In smaller villages, every household slaughtered its own, making your trade less formal. But one truth is certain. Birds fueled medieval tables, from peasant stews to noble banquets, and someone had to prepare them. A quirky tidbit. In some feast records, kitchens note ordering hundreds of chickens, capons and geese for a single night. Imagine the line of gutters, knives flashing, feathers flying, the air thick with clucks turned to silence. The grandeur of a feast hall glittering with gold cups was built on the backs of labour like yours. The dangers are not glorious, but they are real. Knives slip on slick feathers, slicing hands. Infection seeps through cuts, swelling fingers until they stiffen. Buckets of offal attract rats, whose bites bring fever. And always there is the endless ache of bent backs, sore wrists, numb legs from hours standing in muck. No one sings songs of chicken gutters, but your scars hum their own. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did for a living, you could shrug and say, "I turn clucks into suppers." Crude, but true. Your reputation is plain. Nobles never see you. Merchants barely acknowledge you. Cooks grumble that you miss feathers, though they cannot keep up without you. To most townsfolk you are invisible, your work taken for granted the moment a roasted bird lands on a platter. Yet you know the truth. Without you, bellies would stay empty, and feast days would lose their sparkle. Historians still debate whether chicken gutters felt pride or shame. Some argue they were proud of their skill, speed, precision, toughness. Others say they were mocked, lumped with knackers and dung workers. Perhaps both are true. You feel pride when you lay out a row of clean carcasses, neat and ready for spit. But you feel shame when feathers cling to your hair as children point and laugh. By evening the yard is quieter, only a few hens left. You wipe your knife, rub your wrists, dump buckets of offal into trenches. Dogs scavenge, pigs snuffle, the cycle of filth feeding filth. You strip feathers from your clothes, though many remain. You stink of blood and smoke. But tomorrow you'll rise again, seize another bird, twist another neck. You are the chicken gutter, the hidden hand behind every roast, the invisible step between clucking yard and feasting hall. Your knife is quick, your hands stained, your labour forgotten the moment the first bite is taken. And yet you keep working, because hunger never ends, and chickens never stop laying until they too meet your blade. The feathers settle, the clucks fade, and the stink of blood drifts into memory. Now the ground itself calls you, not to sow, not to reap, but to carve, gouge, and reshape the very earth with spade and sweat. You are no farmer, no ploughman planting seed for harvest. Tonight you are the ditch digger, the man who cuts wounds into the land so that others may live dry, defended or watered. Your morning begins with a shout and the slap of wood on wood as foremen rouse crews. You grab your spade, blunt from overuse, haft worn smooth by palms. The tool is heavier than it looks, and by dusk it will feel heavier still. The worksite is a raw scar outside town. Half-dug trenches stretching toward fields, waterlogged pits brimming with muck, piles of spoil heaped like miniature hills. Orders are clear. Dig deeper, dig straighter, dig until water runs where it is told. You sink the blade, lean with your whole weight, and lift clods of clay. Over and over, the rhythm is punishing, step, thrust, lift, fling. Your back screams, your hands blister, sweat beads even in frost. The earth resists, stones jar your arms, roots claw back, water seeps in to undo hours of effort. Still you keep at it, because the ditch must be cut, whether to drain fields, feed mills, or protect walls. Historians still argue whether ditch diggers were free labourers, conscripts, or serfs forced by duty. Some records show paid gangs hired by towns to cut drainage across marshes. Others describe peasants compelled by lords to dig moats or irrigation channels. Likely it was all three, but whoever they were, they sweated in mud just like you. The sun climbs and the ditch deepens. Water seeps faster now, pooling at your feet. You scoop it with buckets, cursing. Mud sucks at your boots until they nearly tear off. You stumble, fall, rise again, spade dripping black slime. The foreman yells, "Faster! The Lord wants it done before planting." You bite your tongue and dig harder. A quirky tidbit. In some towns, ditch diggers were blamed for floods when dikes burst or moats collapsed. Never mind that lords demanded impossible deadlines, or that storms swept in without mercy. If water rose, fingers pointed at men with spades. You carried not only mud but guilt, heaped unfairly upon your bent shoulders. Your midday meal is coarse bread, onions, maybe cheese if luck favours. You eat sitting in the ditch you've cut, boots dripping, flies buzzing, then back to work. The ditch must be widened, its sides angled, its bottom smoothed so water flows. Precision matters. Too shallow, and it floods too deep, and the banks collapse. You shape earth as carefully as a mason shapes stone, though no one praises you as builder. Dangers lurk everywhere. Trenches collapse, burying men alive in seconds. You've seen shoulders vanish under sliding earth, hands clawing out before silence takes them. Water hides holes, drowning the unwary. Spades slip, cutting legs, and sickness rises from the mud. Ague, fevers, sores that never heal. Few ditch diggers live long without scars, inside or out. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked what you did, you could grin and say, "I dig holes people trip into." Not inaccurate, though it sells short the truth that your holes save fields from drowning and castles from siege. Your reputation is low. Nobles barely notice you. Merchants mutter at the taxes that pay you. Peasants see you as one of their own, though dirtier, more ragged. Some mock you as mudmen, others pity you. Yet all depend on you. Without ditches, crops rot in flooded fields. Towns drown in storms, castles stand unguarded. You are scorned and indispensable in equal measure. Historians still debate whether ditch diggers organised into bands with their own leaders or simply followed overseers. Some chronicles describe ditch companies moving from town to town, offering labour for coin. Others show lords driving peasants with whips until moats were carved. The records blur, but the mud is the same. Evening creeps. The ditch stretches longer, straighter. Water trickling through its new path. You slump on your spade, muscles trembling. Foreman bark final orders. Shore the banks with brush. Drive stakes. Pile spoil higher. You obey, though your arms barely lift. At last the sun sinks. Shadows stretch. And you drop onto the earth you fought all day. You walk home caked in mud, eyes gritty, body sagging. Coins clink in your pouch if you're lucky. If not, you carry only bruises. You lie on straw, every joint aflame. But already tomorrow's ditch waits in your dreams. Another trench, another scar in the land, another day stolen by mud. You are the ditch digger. The man who moves rivers with sweat, who digs defences no one thanks, who drains fields so others may reap. Forgotten in chronicles, yet carved into the bones of the land. And until your back breaks or the ditch swallows you, you will keep digging. The mud of the ditch dries on your boots, your arms ache, and your back longs for rest. But the town calls you upward now, not downward. Up into the sky, into towers that scrape clouds, into a chamber where ropes sway and iron hearts wait to thunder. Tonight you climb narrow stairs, stones spiralling until your legs tremble. At the top, the air is thin, and the sound is heavier than anything you've yet carried. Tonight, you are the bell ringer. The chamber is vast, filled with hulking bells hung in timber frames, each bigger than a man's torso, some as tall as a horse. Dust floats in beams of sunlight through the slits in the tower walls. You wipe sweat from your brow and wrap hands around the rope. Below, the whole town sleeps, prays, feasts, or fears. But here in this chamber, time itself is yours to command. Your first duty is to mark the hour. At dawn you heave the rope, lean back with all your weight, and the bell stirs. The clapper swings, iron meets iron, and the note bursts like thunder trapped in stone. It shakes through your arms, rattles your bones, pours down into streets, across fields, into cottages where children stir and mothers light fires. Each toll is a heartbeat for the town, steady and inescapable. But bells are not just clocks. They are alarms, signals, warnings. Fire in the market. You ring a frantic peal until everyone wakes and rushes with buckets. Enemy riders at the gates. You strike fast, furious, a martial rhythm that sends men scrambling for weapons. Plague sweeping the streets. You toll slow, mournful notes that echo like a funeral for the whole town. Births, weddings, deaths, victories, disasters, all are announced by your hands on the rope. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were considered craftsmen with guilds of their own, or whether they were mere servants of the church and council. Some records treat them with respect, noting wages and privileges. Others ignore them altogether, as though bells rang themselves. The truth, as usual, lies in between. Without human strength, no bell could ever sound. The work is brutal. Each ring demands your whole body. You brace your legs, haul with your arms, and feel the rope burn across your palms. If you mistime your release, the rope whips you into the air, dragging you upward until you crash against the beams. Many bell ringers bear scars, broken fingers, dislocated shoulders, bruises that never fully fade. Yet you learn the rhythm, the exact pull and release that makes the giant iron heart sing without killing you. A quirky tidbit. In some towns, bells were believed to drive away storms. Ringers were ordered to climb during thunder and toll furiously to scatter lightning. Imagine it. Rain lashing, wind shrieking, and you dangling from a rope, soaked to the bone, praying the iron above doesn't draw fire from the sky. Some swore it worked. Others swore it only made towers more tempting to lightning. Historians still debate whether belief saved lives or risked them. Here's your nightly joke. If someone asked your occupation, you could grin and say, "I'm in communications, loud ones." Not wrong. You're the medieval town's telephone, alarm clock, radio, and siren rolled into one. Your reputation is complicated. Children love the bells, clapping when they ring. Lovers carve promises into tower stones, believing the sound blesses their vows. But others curse you when bells drag them from warm beds, or toll endlessly for plague dead. Some even fear you, whispering that constant ringing shakes the soul or draws misfortune. You shrug, knowing the town cannot live without your noise. Evenings bring your most solemn work, a slow toll for the dead, each strike carrying grief across rooftops. You close your eyes, timing the rhythm, feeling the weight of sorrow in every swing. No one sees your sweat, no one hears your laboured breath, but all hear the sound, and sound is enough. At last, night deepens. You coil ropes, brush dust from your tunic, and sit in the tower slit staring over rooftops. The air is cool, the stars sharp. Below, lives move like ants, unaware of you watching. Yet their world turns on your rhythm. You sigh, stand, and make your final toll. Midnight, steady and calm. The note lingers in the air like a lullaby rolling away across hills. You are the bell ringer, the voice of iron, the keeper of time, the unseen herald of joy and grief alike. You sweat so others remember hours. You bleed so others hear warnings. You pull rope so the whole town moves to the music of metal. And until your arms fail, until silence falls, you will keep ringing. And so, after 30 strange journeys through the hidden labours of the Middle Ages, you finally pause. You have trudged through cesspits with gong farmers, carried leeches in jars, stomped wool in vats of urine, and walked the lonely fields with shepherds' flocks. You have tasted ale, gutted chickens, dug ditches, rung bells, and sat beside the sick that no one else dared to touch. These were not the heroes of chronicles, not the knights sung in ballads or the queens painted in gilded manuscripts. These were the invisible hands, the bent backs, the whispered names of those who made medieval life possible. What ties them all together is the quiet truth that history is not built only by kings or battles. It is carried on the shoulders of people whose jobs seem bizarre, unpleasant, or laughable to us now, but without them, society would have collapsed. Every trench dug kept a village dry. Every bell rung called neighbours to fight fire. Every bird gutted filled the stomach of someone who might one day change the world. Even the mourners, The jesters, the dog whippers, all played their part in the strange theatre of survival. Historians still debate how much dignity these people carried, how much shame they endured, and how much agency they really had. But one thing is certain, their work mattered. Their sweat left marks invisible on parchment, but carved into the bones of towns, fields, and families. So as you drift into sleep, imagine those lives, not as grotesque oddities, but as threads in the great tapestry of human endurance. Their jobs may be gone, their names forgotten, but their labour lingers in every story we tell of the past. Let their echoes remind you that history is not only crowns and battles, but buckets and ropes, feathers and bells, cries and whispers in the night. And with that thought, soften your breath. Let the images blur, let the noises fade into silence. Rest, knowing that the strangest jobs of yesterday are simply proof of how endlessly inventive, stubborn, and resilient people have always been. Sleep well, sweet dreams,